Chapter 270. The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with a deeper meaning that can't be found online are all available here. The two of them rode Eunuch Wei's carriage to the imperial palace. Eunuch Wei was the head steward of Pure Flower's palace, so no one dared to stop him from inspecting his carriage. The group smoothly entered the palace. Strictly speaking, Pure Flower's palace didn't belong to the imperial harem. Men outside could enter, but Eunuch Wei had to inform the emperor that they weren't summoned. However, by the time he went to inform the emperor was already close to losing consciousness. His condition was very bad. His face was swollen and he had difficulty breathing. It was as if he wouldn't be able to breathe at any moment. "Your Majesty." Eunuch Wei couldn't care less. He hurriedly went out to invite Gu Jiao and Xiao Lulang in. This was the first time Xiao Lulang had seen Gu Jiao save a patient. The scene at Jadewater Alley when she operated on Gu Qinglin was too bloody, so Gu Jiao closed the door and didn't allow Xiao Lulang to enter. Gu Jiao carried her medical kit to the bright yellow dragon bed. Her expression was calm and unhurried. "Light the lamps. Quickly light the lamps," Eunuch Wei hurriedly instructed. All the candles were lit, and the oil lamps were adjusted to the brightest. The dim bedchamber was suddenly brightly lit. Gu Jiao was dressed in green. Her slender figure stood in the vast and spacious hall. She was as small as a chestnut, but she emitted a dazzling radiance and aura. Xiao Lulang stared at her. This was a serious expression that he had never seen before. It was a little unfamiliar, but also a little hard to shift his gaze away. "Zhuang Yuan Xiao, my apologies." Eunuch Wei smiled embarrassedly at Xiao Lulang. It was time to undress His Majesty. He couldn't let people watch anymore. He had the palace servants place a screen in front of the bright yellow dragon bed. Xiao Lulang could only vaguely see the figure projected on the screen. "Is His Majesty all right?" Eunuch Wei asked worriedly. He was fine just now. Why did it suddenly become so serious? Isn't it just a few mouthfuls of water? This was dry drowning, which was a type of drowning. Usually, people would choke on a few mouthfuls of water, and be no different from ordinary people when they came ashore. However, when they returned home, they would have difficulty breathing, cyanosis of the mouth and lips, drowsiness, fatigue, coma, suffocation, and even drowning. This kind of situation mostly occurred in young children and people with weak bodies. It also happened occasionally in people with strong bodies. The main reason was that there wasn't much water in the lungs, so it didn't affect the air exchange between the alveoli. However, there would be convulsions in the throat, closure of the glottis, and hypoxia in the brain. Gu Jiao stepped onto the dragon bed, took off His Majesty's sleeping clothes, and knelt beside His Majesty. She cleaned up the residue in His Majesty's mouth and nose, and then performed chest compressions for His Majesty. After doing this, she opened the small medicine box and found a portable bottle of pure oxygen inside. There are more and more things other than medicine. Gu Jiao put the oxygen mask on the emperor. The emperor slowly opened his eyes after a short while. His blurry vision slowly became clearer. The moment he saw that it was Gu Jiao, the emperor's heart calmed down. He opened his mouth. "Miss Gu." Gu Jiao held his oxygen mask. "Don't talk first. Take some oxygen." His hypoxia was very serious. She didn't know if it had caused cerebral edema. Without the precision detection of instruments, she could only judge by observation. She had to observe him for a night, and judge if he had passed the danger tomorrow morning. Hearing this, the emperor could only nod slightly. Eunuch Wei walked forward and saw that the emperor opened his eyes. He couldn't help but wipe away his bitter tears. "Your Majesty, you scared me to death." Fortunately, His Majesty made a prompt decision to invite Miss Gu over. Otherwise, the imperial doctors would be helpless in such a serious situation. Soon the emperor fell asleep. Eunuch Wei intended to ask Gu Jiao to rest in the side hall, and he could stay by himself. However, he suddenly didn't know how to address her. When he first met her, he thought that she was not married. It became a habit to call her Miss Gu, mainly because the second boss and the people in the medical center also called her that. The second boss called her that because he felt that the two of them were not real husband and wife. The people in the medical center called her that because their boss called her that. In short, everyone now called her Miss Gu. Even if they knew that she had a husband, it seemed that this name had become a part of her identity. Everyone did not change it, and did not feel that it was out of place. This was a very strange thing. The screen was taken down. Gu Jiao returned to Xiao Liulang's side and sat down. Xiao Liulang looked at the thin layer of sweat on her forehead, and took out a handkerchief to pass to her. He intended to give it to Gu Jiao to wipe herself. However, he didn't know if he handed it too high, but Gu Jiao misunderstood that he wanted to wipe it for her. Gu Jiao leaned forward across the small tea table in the middle. Xiao Liulang was stunned and pinched the handkerchief. In the end, he didn't withdraw his hand and gently wiped her forehead. Eunuch Wei prepared a side room for the two of them, and invited them to rest in the side room. I don't need it. You go and rest, Gu Jiao said to Xiao Liulang. Xiao Liulang paused. I don't need it either. Gu Jiao stayed by the patient's side for the whole night. Xiao Liulang stayed by her side for the whole night. Deep in the palace, the silhouette of the cold window, the clouds and the moon on the branches, the night was quiet. Early in the morning, Empress Dowager Zhuang went to the court to continue her great task of listening to politics behind the curtain. Among the officials of the cultural relics, except for Marquis Xianping who liked to sleep in, were basically all present, including the newly appointed Chancellor of the Imperial College, and the Marshal of the World. Empress Dowager Zhuang sat behind the curtain of black beads, luxurious and graceful. The time for the morning court gradually passed, but the emperor still didn't appear. The officials gradually began to whisper. Why hasn't the emperor come yet? Did he forget the time? Or is the emperor out of harmony? It couldn't be that he lingered in the harem, so the emperor didn't attend the morning court. After all, everyone knew that the emperor had recently been addicted to elixirs, and wanted to clear his heart and restrain his desires for 2 years. Or was he angered by Empress Dowager Zhuang? It wasn't strange to think about it. On the first day Empress Dowager Zhuang returned to the court, she conferred the title of Marshal of the World, and forcibly took away the military power that should have belonged to Marquis Xianping. It would be strange if the emperor didn't fall ill from anger. But the more the emperor acted like this, the more the courtiers felt the power of Empress Dowager Zhuang, and unconsciously surrendered to her. Just as the courtiers' emotions were complicated, Eunuch Wei's voice sounded outside the throne room. The emperor has arrived. The civil and military officials knelt on both sides of the room with their ceremonial tablets. The emperor strode through the center of the hall with his head held high, and came to the top of the stairs. He stood in front of the dragon throne and bowed to Empress Dowager Zhuang behind the curtain. Mother, I came late. I hope Mother doesn't blame me. Empress Dowager Zhuang calmly looked at him, a trace of astonishment flashing through her eyes. It's good that the emperor is here. The emperor smiled. Mother seems to be very disappointed. Empress Dowager Zhuang raised her chin and calmly said, The emperor is worrying too much. Jia would be disappointed if the emperor didn't come. Since the emperor's body is fine, let's begin the morning court. The emperor coldly laughed and turned around to sit on the dragon throne. The pressure of the sun of heaven shook the surroundings. Morning court. On the other side, Xiao Liulang and Gu Jiao had a simple breakfast in Pure Flower's palace, and then left the palace. Xiao Liulang took her small medicine box and held it in his hand. The small box clearly wasn't heavy, so he really didn't know how she could take out so much medicine. The two of them passed by the throne room. The carriage was parked near the throne room, and Eunuch Wei personally sent them back. There wasn't anything important in the morning court, so it was quickly dismissed. Empress Dowager Zhuang came out of the throne room, and sat on her phoenix carriage. Her phoenix carriage was carried by 8 palace experts, and was surrounded by muslin curtains. Outsiders could vaguely see a graceful figure, but it wasn't very clear. Gu Jiao and Xiao Liulang's carriage headed east while Empress Dowager Zhuang's carriage headed west. They were both on the same central axis. The moment the carriage turned around and headed towards the inner palace, Empress Dowager Zhuang suddenly raised her hand as if she had sensed something. The female official kneeling beside her hurriedly said, "Stop the carriage." The carriage stopped. The female official asked. Empress Dowager, what's wrong? Empress Dowager Zhuang slightly paused and looked behind the carriage. However, before she could take a look, Zhuang Yuexi's voice came from the front. Great-aunt. Empress Dowager Zhuang was slightly startled by this great-aunt. She stopped looking back and had someone lift the curtain. She looked at Zhuang Yuexi. Today, Zhuang Yuexi was wearing a simple green dress with narrow sleeves. This was also a popular style in the capital. She was puzzled as the capital had always been beautiful with wide sleeves and gorgeous dresses. The richer the family's daughter, the bigger the sleeves. Only the daughters of poor families would wear narrow sleeves to make it easier to work. Last time, Empress Dowager Zhuang liked the trendy cinnabar makeup and wondered if Empress Dowager Zhuang would also like trendy dresses. In the end, she made the right bet. Empress Dowager Zhuang liked it very much. Empress Dowager Zhuang's eyes were gentle as she said to her, "Come up." Zhuang Yuexi was overjoyed. Could she sit on Empress Dowager Zhuang's phoenix carriage? Empress Dowager Zhuang's phoenix carriage was something that even the princess had never sat on before. Zhuang Yuexi was flattered and sat on it. The floor of the phoenix carriage was covered with a soft velvet carpet, which was said to be made of the best snow fox fur. It was as if one was stepping on clouds and had a sense of supreme glory. This was much more magnificent than a carriage and sedan. Zhuang Yuexi sat beside Empress Dowager Zhuang. From this height, she felt that the palace's scenery was different. Zhuang Mengdai was still sleeping and missed the opportunity to sit on the phoenix carriage. After arriving at Renshou Palace, Empress Dowager Zhuang asked people to open the storeroom and take out all the good things. She calmly chose a few for Zhuang Yuexi. There was the Donghai Luminous Pearl, Shisha Purple Smoke Pot, Dongjin Dynasty's Black Iron Dagger, the previous dynasty's Taitsong Ancient Sword, the Old King of War's Armor. The first two were still acceptable, but why did the latter feel a bit wrong? What dagger, ancient sword, armor, were they for a girl? A talented girl like her actually liked famous calligraphy and paintings more. However, since they were given to her by Empress Dowager, she was still very happy. Empress Dowager Zhuang kept giving her gifts, even jade beads, gold pichio and wood tools. Zhuang Yuexi was confused. These were all things for a child to play with. Is it too much? She calmed down and asked. Empress Dowager Zhuang said, for Jiaojiao it's not much. After saying this, Empress Dowager Zhuang was stunned. What did I just say? Zhuang Yuexi was stunned and said, nothing, you said it's for me, it's not much. The Empress Dowager was really too much. How could she even call her name wrong? She had a pet name, Yu Yu. Gu Jiao returned to the courtyard of the medical center, and Xiao Lulang immediately changed her bandages. She lay on the soft bed and Xiao Lulang gently lifted her clothes. This time he did not have any other thoughts because she was seriously injured. When she tried to save the emperor, she tore her wound. A few scabs had split open and blood had seeped into the gauze. After it dried, it stuck to the gauze. Xiao Lulang took a deep breath and calmed down. He said to her, it might hurt a little, bear with it. The person on the bed did not move. Xiao Lulang bent down to take a look, and saw that she was already asleep. Her eyes were slightly closed, and her long eyelashes cast a thin shadow on her cheeks. The tip of her nose was slightly sweaty, and she was probably enduring the pain in her sleep. It was not that it did not hurt, it was that she did not care about it. Was it because she had been in more pain before? Xiao Lulang frowned and changed her bandages even more gently. By Shui Alley, the family sat together to eat. At the table, there was no Gu Jiao, no Xiao Lulang, and no great-aunt who always asked them what they did today. The food was not fragrant anymore. On the 10th of May, the results of the imperial examination came out. Du Ruhan was on the list and ranked 7th. Feng Lin and Lin Qingye were ranked 80 and 79 respectively. There were a total of 72 grand scholars who participated in the imperial examination. The rest were all top 3 grand scholars. Feng Lin and Lin Qingye were top 3 grand scholars. It was not easy for them to beat many of their peers in the imperial examination. Therefore, even though they were at the bottom, Feng Lin was still so excited that he cried. He had seen too many people who fell behind in the examination. Everyone had set off from their hometown, but every time there was an examination, a few would fall behind. There was even no one who could walk to the end, or they could only walk to the end alone. It was rare for them to all stay in the capital. This was really a blessing from the heavens. From today onwards, they were all scholars of the imperial court. Scholars of the imperial court were not official officials in the formal sense. If one insisted on giving them a title, they would be preparatory officials of the imperial court. They would study in the imperial court of the Hanlin Academy for 3 years. After 3 years, the court would close and those with excellent results would become true scholars of the Hanlin Academy. At that time, the examination would not be as high as 80 out of 200. In previous years, the court would only accept 3 people. The rest would be sent to become local officials or teachers based on their results and daily performance. Even though the examination was cruel, there were still 3 years to go. Xiao Lulang was not too surprised by this result. Feng Lin and Lin Qingye were both hard-working people, and had received a lot of guidance from the old chancellor. The top scholar of the imperial court had personally taught them. It would be unreasonable if they still did not pass the examination. On the 11th of May, Xiao Lulang reported to the Hanlin Academy. Along with him were the second-place Commandery Prince and the third-place Ning Ziyuan. According to the laws and traditions of the Zhao country, the top scholar of the previous examinations would be given the position of a 6th-rank scholar in the Hanlin Academy. The main responsibility of a 6th-rank scholar in the Hanlin Academy was to record the emperor's words and deeds, lecture on history, and draft manuscripts related to ceremonies. The 2nd place and the 3rd place were given the position of a 7th-rank scholar in the Hanlin Academy. The editors of the Hanlin Academy were mainly responsible for drafting edicts, editing history books, and lecturing on the Confucian classics. They were new editors and editors. These important tasks were temporarily not for them to do. Their main responsibility was still to study. In addition to continuing to study the original classics, they also needed to familiarize themselves with the laws, court affairs, regulations, agriculture, mathematics, history, astronomy, and so on. It could be said that the things they needed to learn were more and more complicated than when they took the imperial examinations. Those who were not Jinshi could enter the Hanlin Academy, and those who were not Hanlin could not enter the cabinet. But was it that easy to enter the cabinet? Those who thought that they could sit back and relax after passing the 3 tripod tests were too naive. They had an exam every 3 months. At the end of the year, there was also the annual examination. If they failed the annual examination, they would be given a warning. If they failed the annual examination twice, they would be demoted. Commandery Prince N's injuries had healed. He had regained his handsome appearance. Although he was a 7th-rank scholar, the office he was given was bigger and more spacious than Xiao Liulang's. This was not strange. After all, the cabinet was Grand Tutor Zhuang's territory. Most of the Hanlin Academy was also controlled by Grand Tutor Zhuang. However, the office Ning Ziyuan was given was also better than Xiao Liulang's. This was somewhat thought-provoking. No way you. Ning Ziyuan was helping Xiao Lulang move things. As soon as he arrived at the door, he smelled an indescribable smell. He whispered, "Why is your office near the stable?" It was fine in the winter, but when the weather was hot, that smell, it was too overwhelming. Ning Ziyuan continued to whisper, "You said you were going to make things difficult for me. I think you're being made things difficult for by someone else. I heard about what happened to the Zhuang family. That Empress Dowager Zhuang is back. Otherwise, they wouldn't have dared to be so brazen. Just bear with it for a while. When this is over, maybe His Majesty will find an opportunity to give you a place." Xiao Lulang had expected that after returning to the capital, what awaited him would not be a bright future. He said carelessly, "Don't come to my office all the time." "Do you think I want to come here?" Ning Ziyuan whispered. "They told me to come here and laugh at you. Don't take it to heart." Ning Ziyuan was well versed in the ways of an official. On the first day he was pulled into a camp. Before he could protect himself, he could only pretend to defect to the enemy. In fact, he was on His Majesty's side. He was also willing to become friends with Xiao Lulang. "I've put down the things. I'm leaving." Ning Ziyuan gently put a stack of books on Xiao Liulang's desk. He walked to the door, hesitated for a moment, then turned back and picked up a few books. Sorry, brother. After saying this, he threw the books on the ground with a loud bang. Then he picked them up, patted them, and quickly wiped them clean with his sleeves. Then he ran out as if he was escaping. Xiao Lulang shook his head in self-mockery. Being isolated was only the first step. There was also Ning Ziyuan, who helped him in his hour of need. It was not as bad as he had imagined. Recently, several major events had happened in the capital. The most eye-catching one was naturally the high-profile return of Empress Dowager Zhuang, who had been recuperating for more than a year. As soon as she returned to the palace, everything in the capital changed. The second thing was also related to Empress Dowager Zhuang. Empress Dowager Zhuang was going to build a mansion in the capital, which was surrounded by mountains and rivers. Since Empress Dowager Zhuang returned to the palace, the people in the capital had been talking about her, whether they hated or despised her. Is the Empress Dowager building a summer palace for herself again? Isn't it enough that she has 3 summer palaces? Is she still tormenting? It's not for herself. I heard that it's for her niece. It's her niece, not her grandson. Everyone knew that Empress Dowager Zhuang had no children of her own. The one she loved the most was her eldest brother's grandson, Zhuang Yuheng. Wasn't she building a prince's mansion for him? He was almost at the age of marriage, wasn't he? It was time to build a mansion for him. It's not for Prince An, it's for Prince An's younger sister. Which younger sister? Of course it's not for that idiot younger sister. It's for the eldest daughter of the Zhuang family, who ranked first in the girls' school. My brother-in-law is a craftsman there. I heard from him that the Empress Dowager ordered it to be built according to the specifications of the princess's mansion. When the people in the tea house heard this, they couldn't help but gasp. Building according to the specifications of the princess's mansion? Were they trying to raise the Zhuang family's daughter to the heavens? But then again, this Miss Zhuang is both talented and has a peerless appearance. She is indeed worthy of the Empress Dowager's love. When the Empress Dowager came back from recuperating in the temporary imperial residence, she brought her to the palace to stay for a while. She's really comparable to our princesses. If the princesses of the imperial family were not loved, they were just empty titles. Miss Zhuang, who had the Empress Dowager's support, was the real uncrowned princess of the Zhao kingdom. For a moment, the people were envious of Zhuang Yueshi. Zhuang Yueshi was already in the limelight. With this, even a 3-year-old child would know. Zhuang Yueshi was also very happy. She didn't expect the Empress Dowager to love her so much. Today, she changed into a red dress to enter the palace. She wanted to brighten the Empress Dowager's eyes. Who knew that the Empress Dowager's expression would fade? It's not pretty. The Empress Dowager shook her head. Zhuang Yueshi was slightly stunned. This was her prettiest outfit. Her mother and servants all said that it was better than the green dress. But in order to please the Empress Dowager, Zhuang Yueshi changed back to the green dress. Only then did the Empress Dowager's eyes soften. She didn't know if it was an illusion. The Empress Dowager seemed to be looking at her, but also seemed to be looking at someone else through her. That afternoon, it was the day to visit the emperor in the palace. Last time, the emperor was drowning. Although he forced himself to go to court, he collapsed as soon as he returned to Pure Flower's palace. Fortunately, Gu Jiao left some medicine for him. After he finished the medicine today, Eunuch Wei came. Little Jing Kong came to the medical hall to find her after school. Seeing her packing her medicine box, he asked, Jiao 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 Jiao, where are you going? A house call, Gu Jiao said. Where are you going? The Imperial Palace. Gu Jiao said. For Gu Jiao, whether it was the Imperial Palace or a private residence, it was just a place to work. There was nothing to make a fuss about or hide. The Imperial Palace, little Jing Kong blinked his big eyes. He stepped forward and hugged Gu Jiao's hand. With a cute face he said, Jiao Jiao, can you take me with you? I haven't been with you for a few days. I miss you so much. If the emperor was here, he would be able to tell from whom his chubby son learned to be so mushy. Gu Jiao had no resistance to little Jing Kong's cuteness. In addition, little Jing Kong was an obedient child who never caused trouble for Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao thought that it wasn't impossible to take him with her, but there really was no one at home today. Xiao Lulang and the old chancellor went to the Imperial Academy and the Imperial College. Gu Yan and Gu Xiaoshan went to learn martial arts. Madame Yao and senior servant Fang went to the temple to make a wish. Gu Jiao nodded in agreement. Okay, but you can't run around. Little Jing Kong patted his small chest. I promise I won't run around. Gu Jiao brought little Jing Kong onto the carriage. When he saw the little Jing Kong, Eunuch Wei's eyelids twitched. Why did this little ancestor also come? Hello, Eunuch Wei. Little Jing Kong greeted him politely. Eunuch Wei smiled embarrassedly. Okay. Nothing should happen, right? In the past, the three of them always fooled around together. Today, His Highness the Seventh Prince wasn't in the palace, and Minister Su's son wasn't there either. As a little child, he shouldn't be able to cause any trouble. Moreover, no matter how he looked at it, this little child was the most obedient of the three. The pasting of walls and gang fighting were definitely done by His Highness the Seventh Prince and young Master Su. Little Jing Kong was very obedient along the way. He sat next to Gu Jiao and was as cute as a porcelain doll. This made Eunuch Wei completely relieved. After entering Pure Flower's palace, Eunuch Wei led Gu Jiao to the emperor's follow-up examination and left the little fellow to play in the small garden. He brought some snacks and fruits for him, and also arranged for a gentle-looking palace maid to watch over him. Once Eunuch Wei and Gu Jiao left, the little fellow immediately cheated. Big sister palace maid, let's play hide and seek, he said cutely. Then he disappeared. Niu Hulu little Jing Kong smiled mischievously and slipped out of Pure Flower's palace. He wanted to find his great-aunt. The imperial palace was so big that he actually didn't know where his great-aunt lived. However, he had asked little Qi before and found out that the Empress Dowager lived in the inner palace. He just had to pass through the imperial garden. He promised Jiao Jiao that he wouldn't run around, so he really didn't run. He just hopped and hopped. He hopped into the imperial garden and saw a familiar figure. Jiao Jiao? You're also here? He hopped over and hugged the other person's leg. The other person was shocked and pushed him away. Little Jing Kong fell on the grass. It didn't hurt, but he was confused. He raised his head and looked at the other person strangely. You're not Jiao Jiao. Why are you wearing Jiao Jiao's clothes? I've seen you before. You're the big sister who gave me candied haws. When Zhuang Yueshi heard this, she also recognized little Jing Kong. Wasn't this the little fellow she met when she went to Jade Water Alley to find Gu Jiao? Her neck was pecked by the little fellow's gerfalcon, and it hurt for a few days. Wait. What did he call her just now? Jiao Jiao? Gu Jiao's appearance suddenly flashed across Zhuang Yueshi's mind. She was dressed in green, and had a red birthmark on the left side of her face. Zhuang Yueshi's expression changed. Miss Shuang. A palace maid came over with a basket. You need a basket and scissors. This palace maid was sent by the Empress Dowager to serve her. She went to get the tools for picking flowers for her. Otherwise, she wouldn't be alone. Zhuang Yueshi faintly had an absurd guess in her mind. She thought it was impossible. However, she shuddered when she thought of all the strange things that happened after the Empress Dowager returned to the palace, and the coarse clothes that the Empress Dowager wore that night. She didn't take the basket from the palace maid. Instead, she took a few steps back and looked at the little fellow in front of her in horror. Her lips trembled, and she turned around and walked away. Little Jing Kong scratched his head. What's going on? Zhuang Yueshi stumbled back to Renshou Palace in a daze. The palace maid chased after her with the basket. Miss Shuang, are you okay? Are you not feeling well? Or are you frightened by something? Although the imperial garden was taken care of by craftsmen, it was not impossible for insects and rats to appear in May. It can't be. Zhuang Yueshi murmured in a daze. The Empress Dowager doted on her, not a lowly palace maid. She was the Empress Dowager's niece. What was that palace maid? She wasn't even fit to carry her shoes. Pure Flower's palace. Gu Jiao finished examining the emperor. She took off the stethoscope and said, Your Majesty is healthy. There's nothing wrong. That. The emperor's eyes flashed. He wanted to say something but stopped. Gu Jiao said, Your venereal disease has also been cured. You have to insist on a follow-up examination within 2 years. You can have intercourse. Great, his disguise was really gone. He had nothing to live for. The emperor cleared his throat. Cough, it's not like I have to. Great, he could pamper the harem. He was quite happy. Who wasn't a normal man? Gu Jiao packed up and prepared to leave. When she went outside, she found the palace maid looking around. Little Jing Kong was gone. What are you looking for? Gu Jiao asked. The palace maid said, this servant is playing hide and seek with Mrs. Younger brother. You've been played, little girl. Gu Jiao glanced around and knew that little Jing Kong wouldn't hide here. He would only hide in a stove or a rice jar. The little guy had slipped away. Gu Jiao didn't mention her great-aunt's identity to little Jing Kong. Therefore, he didn't know that he was looking for her. However, the little guy skipped around and left a lot of tracks in the grass. Little Jing Kong was determined not to run away. He hopped around outside Pure Flower's palace like a little rabbit. He knew that the Empress Dowager lived here because he asked the palace maids on the way. But what made him angry was that the 2 guards outside didn't let him in. Little Jing Kong said angrily, "You can't stop me. I want to see my great-aunt." One of the eunuchs said, "Which palace are you from?" "This is the Empress Dowager's palace. Go back to where you came from." There were many concubines in the palace. Relatives would visit from time to time. Among them, there was no lack of children the size of little Jing Kong. However, this was the Empress Dowager's palace. Not to mention a relative of a concubine, even His Highness the 7th Prince couldn't trespass. Little Jing Kong couldn't enter in the end. However, if he couldn't enter through the main entrance, what about the dog hole? He heard from Little Chi that there were many dog holes in the palace. What a coincidence. His great-aunt also had one here. He knelt on the ground and crawled over. However, the eunuch who stopped him just now stood behind the dog hole with a small whip in his hand. Little Jing Kong. Little Jing Kong crawled back silently. It was a sunny day today. Little Jing Kong wouldn't give up. Fine, I can't go in. I'll wait for my great-aunt to come out. Perhaps he was lucky. Empress Dowager Zhuang came out after her afternoon nap. She sat on the Phoenix sedan and planned to go to the Imperial Garden to relax. Zhuang Yueshi accompanied her in the comfortable and luxurious sedan. Little Jing Kong climbed up the tree and stood on the high trunk. He looked at the Phoenix sedan passing by below. He squinted his eyes, stretched out his small arms, and slammed himself down. "Great-aunt, I'm coming. Catch me." Empress Dowager Zhuang was sitting on the Phoenix sedan with her eyes closed. Suddenly, she heard a loud bang. Her body shook and she opened her eyes. She frowned and said, "What hit the ground?" Yes, little Jing Kong misjudged and missed the Phoenix sedan. He fell into the grass and couldn't dig himself out for a long time. It's a child. Maybe he's a relative of one of the concubines. A eunuch outside the Phoenix sedan said, "Send someone to send him back." Empress Dowager Zhuang was not interested in other people's children. "Yes," the eunuch replied. Gu Jiao followed little Jing Kong's footprints and found a place nearby. Then she heard the noise and hurried over. However, she bumped into Empress Dowager Zhuang's Phoenix sedan. Digression: are there any more monthly tickets? The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more complete. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online can be found here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_896426/112701610. HTML Genius remembered the website address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikugo mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 271. Please scan the QR code below to download the app for more exciting content. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found on the internet are all available here. Who are you? How dare you stop the Empress Dowager? Get out of the way. The steward who served the Empress Dowager was surnamed Qin. He looked at Gu Jiao and said sternly, Gu Jiao didn't look like a noble in the palace, but she didn't look like a palace mate either. Her clothes were not luxurious, and her temperament was very cold. Gu Jiao didn't get out of the way. She looked at the golden phoenix carriage about 10 steps away. The huge golden phoenix embroidery was shining and dazzling in the light. Behind the long gauze curtain, several figures could be vaguely seen. The figure in the middle was wearing a black robe embroidered with golden phoenixes. He sat upright and still, looking both familiar and strange. Great aunt. Little Jing Kong finally dug himself out of the ground. He endured the little pain and jumped toward the Empress Dowager's carriage. He jumped from the back of the carriage to the front and saw Gu Jiao standing in the middle of the path. He said, "Jiao Jiao." "Jiao Jiao?" Empress Dowager Zhuang's heart was slightly shocked. Little Jing Kong was covered with mud and grass. He jumped over and dropped the grass as he jumped. He said solemnly, "Jiao Jiao, I didn't run away." Gu Jiao came back to her senses. "Yes, you didn't run away. You just jumped and jumped." Gu Jiao raised her hand to remove the grass on the little guy's head and body. Then she took out a handkerchief to wipe the mud on his face. Eunuch Qin wanted to pull the two people away, but when he looked back, he saw that Empress Dowager Zhuang didn't look unhappy at all through the gap of the gauze curtain. Not only that, but the Empress Dowager Zhuang was also in a daze. Empress Dowager Zhuang didn't like children, which was known by all 6 palaces. Even the 2 daughters of Prince Ning rarely went to Empress Dowager Zhuang. But now, Empress Dowager Zhuang didn't feel bored at all when she looked at the little girl and the dirty little bald head. She couldn't even take her eyes off him. An indescribable emotion suddenly rose from the bottom of her heart. She didn't know what was going on either. Zhuang Yueshi sat beside the Empress Dowager and looked at the Empress Dowager's face. She could not help but feel nervous. When Gu Jiao was almost done, little Jing Kong tilted his head and looked at the Phoenix sedan. He thought for a while and called out, "Great aunt." Eunuch Qin's expression changed. He strode forward and said, "How dare you? Who's your great aunt?" Little Jing Kong pointed at her and said seriously, "She is." Eunuch Qin's temples throbbed. "That's the Empress Dowager." "Yes, great aunt." Little Jing Kong looked at the Phoenix sedan and asked in confusion, "Great aunt, why did you come here to be the Empress Dowager? Aren't you coming back with us?" Empress Dowager Zhuang was suddenly stumped by the question. She did not know this child, so why was it so difficult for her to answer the child's question? Also, that strange feeling was getting stronger. She was the Empress Dowager, but when she looked at the 2 children, her heart was suddenly in a mess. She lifted the curtain and wanted to take a closer look at them. "Your Majesty! Your Majesty! Something big has happened." Eunuch Wei rushed into Pure Flower's palace in a hurry. The emperor glanced at him. "Why are you in such a hurry?" Eunuch Wei exclaimed. "Miss Gu and her younger brother have been stopped by the Empress Dowager." "What?" The emperor stood up and strode out. "Imperial Mother!" Just as Empress Dowager Zhuang lifted the curtain, the emperor rushed over, panting. He stood in front of Gu Jiao and little Jing Kong and said breathlessly to Empress Dowager Zhuang, "These 2 are guests that we have invited into the palace. If they have offended Imperial Mother in any way, I hope Imperial Mother will be magnanimous enough to forgive them." Hearing that they were the emperor's people, Empress Dowager Zhuang lost interest. Her gaze turned cold and she lowered the curtain. She said indifferently, "Since they are the emperor's people, then the emperor will take them away." She had no intention of punishing them, but who would believe her? In everyone's eyes, she was that vicious, merciless, and scrupulous demon empress who had no regard for human life. Empress Dowager Zhuang did not explain. "See you off, Imperial Mother," the emperor said. "Prepare the carriage." Empress Dowager Zhuang said indifferently. The Phoenix carriage slowly passed by Gu Jiao and little Jing Kong. At the moment when the carriage passed by, Empress Dowager Zhuang could not help but lift the curtain and see the thin and tender face under the sun. Her eyebrows were delicate, her skin was like porcelain, and there was a red birthmark on the left side of her face. The girl was expressionless and looked cold. However, Empress Dowager Zhuang did not know if it was her illusion, but she felt that the girl was wronged. What was she wronged about? She had not punished her yet. Empress Dowager Zhuang lowered the curtain. For the whole afternoon, Her mind was filled with the girl's face and the heart-wrenching grievance. The relationship between the emperor and the empress dowager was tense. He had been worried that Gu Jiao would be implicated, so he was very cautious. Unexpectedly, Empress Dowager Zhuang still met her. To be cautious, he asked eunuch Wei to personally send her out of the palace. After leaving the palace, Gu Jiao and little Jing Kong got on the carriage to go back. Little Jing Kong was a little depressed. Jiao Jiao, Grandaunt doesn't want us anymore? Gu Jiao touched his little bald head. She did not know either. However, Grandaunt seemed to really ignore them. Little Jing Kong climbed onto Gu Jiao's lap and jumped into Gu Jiao's arms to seek comfort. Gu Jiao held him and stroked his little back. Little Jing Kong fell asleep sadly. The coachman was Xiao Sanzi. He waved the whip and the carriage started to move. However, after a few steps, they were stopped by a familiar voice. Wait! It was Zhuang Yueshi. She caught up with Gu Jiao's carriage and stopped it, forcing Xiao Sanzi to tighten the reins and stop the carriage. Xiao Sanzi felt that this girl looked familiar, but he could not remember where he had seen her. Zhuang Yueshi ignored him. She walked to the window and said to Gu Jiao, Miss Gu, Grandaunt asked me to tell you something. She had never called her Grandaunt in this way even in front of the Empress Dowager. However, she called her Grandaunt intimately in front of Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao lifted the curtain indifferently. Zhuang Yueshi's eyelashes trembled. She looked at Gu Jiao coldly and said, Grandaunt hopes that today's incident will not happen again. Don't come to the palace to look for her in the future. She is the Empress Dowager. What happened before was just an expedient measure. Don't have any thoughts that you shouldn't have. Gu Jiao looked straight at Zhuang Yueshi. Zhuang Yueshi felt her scalp tingle from that direct and sharp gaze. However, she did not show it on her face. She calmed herself down and took out a pouch from her wide sleeve. She threw it to Gu Jiao and said, I'm returning this to you. This pouch was personally embroidered by Gu Jiao for her Grandaunt. Her embroidery was not very beautiful, but it was very durable. Grandaunt always carried it with her to store small amounts of money. When Grandaunt left, she did not take anything from Biscuit Alley. She only took a simple set of clothes and this pouch that had never left her side. This was the only thing that Gu Jiao left at Grandaunt's place. Now my great-aunt had returned it. Gu Jiao smoothed the creases on the pouch. She did not say anything and quietly put down the curtain. Looking at Gu Jiao's abandoned expression, Zhuang Yueshi felt an indescribable pleasure. The person who blocked her in the alley and threatened her that she would not be able to pay the price finally had a day like this. Her brother was hers and so was her Grandaunt. Zhuang Yueshi returned to Renshou Palace. Empress Dowager Zhuang was tidying up her set of coarse clothes. She was already the Empress Dowager. These clothes were not presentable and should have been thrown away long ago. However, she did not throw them away. Instead, she brought them back to the palace and kept them in a box. Today, she took out the clothes and laid them on the large and luxurious bed. She flipped and turned in her pockets as if she was looking for something. The little palace maid asked, Empress Dowager, what are you looking for? I am looking for. Empress Dowager Zhuang was stunned. Yes, what was she looking for? Did she feel that something important was missing? But what was it? Zhuang Yueshi's eyes flashed as she walked into the room. Empress Dowager. Empress Dowager Zhuang asked, when you sent the clothes here, did you see anything else? Empress Dowager Zhuang stayed at the Zhuang family for a night. The clothes were washed by the servants of the Zhuang family and were sent by Zhuang Yueshi herself. Zhuang Yueshi lowered her eyes. No, only this set of clothes. That night, Empress Dowager Zhuang did not sleep well. As soon as she closed her eyes, she saw the little girl's wronged eyes. She tossed and turned for most of the night and finally fell asleep. However, she dreamed of the little monk again. The little monk tearfully questioned her. Grandaunt, why did you come here to be the Empress Dowager? Aren't you going back with us? Aren't you going back with us? You are our Grandaunt. The next morning, through the thick bead curtain, the courtiers felt the Empress Dowager Zhuang's aura of don't provoke me or I will kill your whole family. The courtiers were all silent and did not dare to breathe loudly. After the court, Empress Dowager Zhuang called Grand Tutor Zhuang aside. In the corridor outside the side hall, Grand Tutor Zhuang bowed to Empress Dowager Zhuang. Empress Dowager. Empress Dowager Zhuang. I have something to ask you. Grand Tutor Zhuang. Please ask. Empress Dowager Zhuang. Who was I with when I was missing for more than a year? Grand Tutor Zhuang was surprised. Why did you suddenly ask this? Empress Dowager Zhuang said indifferently. You only need to answer my question. Yes. Grand Tutor Zhuang cupped his hands and said. After the Empress Dowager escaped from Leprosy Mountain, she wandered among the common people and moved to a small village. She was found by His Majesty's people and was temporarily put under house arrest. Empress Dowager Zhuang impatiently said, I'm asking, who are they? Grand Tutor Zhuang said seriously, the new top scorer Xiao Lulang. Xiao Lu Lang? Empress Dowager Zhuang frowned. This name was very familiar, but she could not remember where she had heard it. However, if she had lived in his house, it seemed to make sense. Grand Tutor Zhuang continued. Xiao Lulang is His Majesty's person, and has been in contact with His Majesty since he was in the village. Later he went to the capital to take the exam. On the surface it was to take the exam, but in reality, it was to deceive people and bring the Empress Dowager into the capital. In fact, Hung had already found the Empress Dowager's whereabouts in the county, and had even gone to meet her. Unfortunately, the Empress Dowager did not know Hung at that time and even injured him. Hung did not dare to act rashly, and could only return to the capital to discuss countermeasures with me. I could only contact my subordinates and force His Majesty to reopen the Imperial College. Since Xiao Lulang wanted to enter the capital, he would not leave the Empress Dowager in the village. In fact, the situation at that time was not like this. They were clearly using Xiao Lulang, but when Grand Tutor Zhuang thought about it, he felt that Xiao Lulang had premeditated. If Grand Tutor Zhuang was lying to deceive Empress Dowager Zhuang, Empress Dowager Zhuang might have seen through it. However, he really felt that way. Empress Dowager Zhuang withdrew her gaze from his face and said, There are more people in the family. Did no one suspect? Grand Tutor Zhuang said. Xiao Lulang was originally a poor kid from outside. He declared to the outside world that the Empress Dowager was his great-aunt. Since no one in the family came to seek refuge with him, no one suspected anything. The Empress Dowager suddenly asked about them. Was it because they came to find the Empress Dowager? Zhuang Yueshi had already sent a letter to Grand Tutor Zhuang about what happened in the palace yesterday. Of course, she did not mention that she went to find Gu Jiao. She only told him about the encounter in the Imperial Garden. Grand Tutor Zhuang said, They drugged the Empress Dowager and made her lose her memory. They took the opportunity to get close to the Empress Dowager and captured her heart. The Empress Dowager must not be deceived by them. The grandaunt was fake. They were only using her. This knowledge made Empress Dowager Zhuang feel very uncomfortable. But wasn't it strange? Shouldn't she feel angry and humiliated? Shouldn't she give an order to kill their whole family? But why was she only sad? The weather was good, and there were no clouds in the blue sky. Marquis Gu had not been to Baishui Alley for some time. Today, he was going to the supervisor of the manor built for the Empress Dowager. He passed by Baishui Alley and decided to visit Yaoshi. When he reached the gate of the courtyard, he met Gu Jiao, who was carrying little Jing Kong back. Little Jing Kong was asleep in Gu Jiao's arms. There were still tears on his eyelashes. Gu Jiao's expression was even colder than usual. Marquis Gu had not seen this unfilial daughter for some time. She seemed to have grown taller, and her eyebrows were more like Yaoshi's. Where did you go? He asked in a bad mood. Gu Jiao ignored him and walked into the courtyard. Marquis Gu gritted his teeth. I'm talking to you. Didn't you hear me? Gu Jiao looked at him coldly. You better not provoke me today. Marquis Gu felt a knot in his heart, because of her cold eyes. His hand trembled and the drawing fell out. Gu Jiao was not interested in his things. But it was placed there. She did not want to see it. Then she stopped in her tracks. Marquis Gu quickly picked up the drawing and patted the dust off. He glared at Gu Jiao and said, What are you looking at? It's not like I built a manor for you. Then he remembered that it was rare for him to show off in front of this girl. He brushed the drawing and said to her, Do you know what this is? It's a manor built for Miss Zhuang by the Ministry of Works. What's this? Gu Jiao held the sleeping little Jing Kong in one hand and pointed at a small dot on the drawing with the other hand. Marquis Gu raised his eyebrows. An ancient well. What about this? Crabapple tree. It has to be tall. Tie a straw mat to the tree. It said that it can hold a child. Why does it need to hold a child? How would I know? You can ask the Empress Dowager if you have the ability. It was rare for him to be angry. His tone was very arrogant. But after saying that, he subconsciously raised his hand and covered his head. But Gu Jiao did not beat him. It was quite unexpected. Gu Jiao continued to ask curiously, "What's this?" Today was probably the longest conversation between father and daughter since they met. They had said so many words, but this girl still did not beat him. Is this girl finally becoming filial? Life was so good. This is bamboo, this is a doghouse, this is a chicken coop, there is a bird cage, this is a vegetable field, this is the east room, this is the west room. Marquis Gu's eyebrows danced as he spoke. However, as he spoke, he sensed that something was wrong. He looked at the drawing and then at the yard in front of him. What was going on? Wasn't this the manor? Gu Jiao also saw it. She took out the money bag and looked at it carefully for a long time. I don't want you anymore. She wanted to hear it from her grandaunt. The next day, Gu Jiao went to the imperial palace again with the opportunity of seeing the emperor. This time it was her turn to disappear. She went to the room and disappeared. There were guards in the imperial palace, but it was not too difficult for her to escape. She went to the imperial garden. Maybe it was the good weather, or maybe Empress Dowager Zhuang did not want to stay in Renshou Palace. In short, she often sat alone in the garden in a daze recently. When Gu Jiao came, she was in a daze in front of a potted crabapple. Who is it? Eunuch Qin saw the shadow on the ground and looked back at Gu Jiao. He said vigilantly, "It's you again." Empress Dowager Zhuang heard this and also turned her head. At first sight of Gu Jiao, Empress Dowager Zhuang's mood actually jumped for a moment. But the next second, she thought of something and her heart became cold again. What are you doing here? Empress Dowager Zhuang asked in a low voice. Gu Jiao said, I came to find my grandaunt. Empress Dowager Zhuang said lightly, there is no grandaunt here. There is. Gu Jiao said with a trace of grievance. Empress Dowager Zhuang's heart suddenly clenched. She clenched her fingers and said coldly, don't play this little game with Aijia. When Aijia killed a bloody path in the harem, you weren't even born yet. These are the leftovers of Aijia. Do you really think Aijia will be fooled by you? Gu Jiao didn't rush to refute. Instead, she stretched out her hand and spread out her fingers, revealing the purse in her palm. Empress Dowager Zhuang originally didn't know what she had lost. But when she saw the purse, she instantly knew that it was what she had been looking for. Empress Dowager Zhuang's eyes became colder. Why are Aijia's things in your hands? Gu Jiao lowered her eyes and said in a very wronged and very obedient manner. Someone gave it to me and said that you returned it to me. They said that you didn't want me anymore. How could Aijia not want you? You are Aijia's Jiao Jiao. These words suddenly flashed through Empress Dowager Zhuang's mind. The latest chapter of this book is not finished. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_8964286/1126749993. HTML Genius remembered the website address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg.com Bikugo mobile reading website. zhhbqg.com. Chapter 272. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that cannot be found on the internet are all available here. Even she herself was stunned. She was stunned for a while. She moved her mouth in disbelief, but no sound came out for a long time. Jiao Jiao? The name that came out of her mouth carelessly, did it belong to this little girl? Why did she? Empress Dowager. Zhuang Yuexi's voice suddenly appeared. She saw a familiar little figure standing beside the Empress Dowager from afar. She was suspicious and walked over to take a look. It was indeed Gu Jiao. Her heart skipped a beat. Then she saw the small purse in Gu Jiao's hand and her face changed. She tried to hide her uneasiness and told herself that the Empress Dowager had already forgotten about this girl. Now that the Empress Dowager favored her, this girl's efforts would be in vain. Her thoughts turned and she calmed down. She looked at Gu Jiao and asked with a face full of doubt, "What are you doing here? Is the palace a place where you can come and go as you please?" Of course not. But since Gu Jiao could come in, it meant that she had a way. Gu Jiao only knew the emperor and the Empress Dowager in the palace. The Empress Dowager did not give her the right to come and go freely, so she could only be the emperor. Zhuang Yuexi's words were undoubtedly reminding the Empress Dowager that Gu Jiao was the emperor's person. The Empress Dowager's expression became colder. Zhuang Yuexi continued, "I heard that the emperor's body is not well. You are treating the emperor. I don't know how you are doing." Everyone in Zhao country knew that the Empress Dowager and the emperor were enemies. Grand Tutor Zhuang helped the emperor ascend the throne in order to train a puppet emperor. Once the emperor grew up, he would not be willing to be a puppet. The competition between the two had never stopped. The Empress Dowager wanted to kill the emperor when he was sick. However, the appearance of Gu Jiao gave the emperor a chance to live. Would the Empress Dowager like Gu Jiao? Those words were still echoing in Empress Dowager Zhuang's mind. However, she was no longer confused but cold. This girl got close to her under the emperor's instructions. She let her take the opportunity to enter her heart, most likely because she had lost her memory. She was just careless and fell into this girl's trap. It wouldn't happen again in the future. Leave the things behind and you can go. Empress Dowager Zhuang raised her chin and looked at the flowers in the imperial garden. Oh. Gu Jiao raised her eyebrows and glanced at Zhuang Yuexi. So it was not Grandaunt who asked someone to return it to me. Only then did Empress Dowager Zhuang realize that this girl seemed to have said the word return from the beginning. She frowned and looked at the wrinkled money bag. It was really a very strange money bag. The threads were all left outside. Did this girl personally make it for her? It's obvious that you stole the Empress Dowager's things and came here to talk to yourself. Zhuang Yuexi clenched her fingers and turned to Empress Dowager Zhuang. Empress Dowager, you must have accidentally dropped it on the road and this girl picked it up. Gu Jiao looked at Zhuang Yuexi. You gave it to me. Zhuang Yuexi denied flatly, I didn't. She turned to Empress Dowager Zhuang. Empress Dowager, don't listen to her instigation. Enough. Empress Dowager Zhuang interrupted Zhuang Yuexi. Zhuang Yuexi was too noisy today, which made her a little irritated. In fact, Gu Jiao spoke more than Zhuang Yuexi today. However, Empress Dowager Zhuang didn't realize that she only felt that Zhuang Yuexi was very noisy. Gu Jiao looked at Empress Dowager Zhuang with grievance. Do you really want me to go? Then tell me personally that you don't want me anymore. Empress Dowager Zhuang took a deep breath and opened her mouth. She couldn't say it. When she thought of telling this girl that she didn't want her anymore, her throat felt like it was blocked by a huge stone. Boring. Empress Dowager Zhuang stood up coldly and left the imperial garden. Gu Jiao touched the money bag in her hand. When Empress Dowager Zhuang was far away, Zhuang Yuexi said coldly, Don't ask for a snub. You know very well what your family has done to my great-aunt. She is kind and didn't argue with you, but you shouldn't take advantage of her. Do you really think that she cares about you? She just mistook you for me. I'm her real grandniece. Oh. Gu Jiao answered indifferently and didn't take Zhuang Yuexi's words to heart. This woman didn't speak the truth. She didn't want to listen. Bastard. Zhuang Yuexi saw that she didn't care and felt that she punched cotton. She felt weak. She was actually a smart person, but when facing Gu Jiao, it was easy for her to be provoked to the point of forgetting her propriety. She steeled her heart and blurted out. You should weigh your own weight. Stop daydreaming. She doesn't remember you anymore. Gu Jiao was stunned. She didn't remember her, Gu Jiao believed her. Gu Jiao was about to leave the palace, but she turned back and walked forward. Where are you going? Zhuang Yueshi scolded. Renshou Palace. Gu Jiao raised her eyebrows and said without looking back. Zhuang Yueshi stomped her feet angrily. You. Gu Jiao caught up with Empress Dowager Zhuang. The palace servants were used to seeing Empress Dowager Zhuang's face. She caught up and Empress Dowager Zhuang didn't order her to chase her away, so the palace servants didn't dare to say anything. When they arrived at Renshou Palace, Empress Dowager Zhuang stepped in. Gu Jiao also slipped in. Eunuch Qin gritted his teeth. Why was this girl like a ghost? Empress Dowager Zhuang finally stopped in the small garden in the front hall. She looked at Gu Jiao expressionlessly. Why are you always following me? Gu Jiao thought for a while. I want to follow you. Empress Dowager Zhuang was speechless. She should be angry, but why was she secretly happy? Was she poisoned by this girl? How many bewitching potions did this girl give her during the year she was under house arrest? Empress Dowager Zhuang returned to her bedroom angrily. Gu Jiao naturally followed her in. She looked at the dazzling bedchamber and asked curiously, Great Aunt, is this where you live? Are you lonely? It looked luxurious, but it was big and empty. Every part of it was cold. Empress Dowager Zhuang heard this and was in a daze. No one had ever asked her whether she was lonely or not. The father who sent her to the palace never asked, the husband who left her in the palace never asked, and the people who wanted her to climb higher and higher never asked. While she was in a daze, a white hand reached over. The hand was holding a paper bag that had just been opened. There were 3 candied fruits inside. These candied fruits were obviously from the common people. The dried fruits from the palace were much more exquisite. How dare you? How can you give the Empress Dowager these dirty things from the common people? Zhuang Yueshi came over with a fruit plate. There were freshly cut fruits and a few dried fruits from the palace as decoration. It looked much better than Gu Jiao's candied fruits. Empress Dowager Zhuang's eyes fell on the candied fruits in Gu Jiao's hand. She swallowed hard and said with a dignified expression, I Jia won't eat it. Oh. Gu Jiao began to eat by herself. Empress Dowager Zhuang ate the fruits that Zhuang Yueshi gave her without tasting the food. Gu Jiao went to the small kitchen and made a bowl of sugar eggs for Empress Dowager Zhuang. Zhuang Yueshi looked at the sugar eggs in the bowl with disdain. You give the Empress Dowager this kind of thing? The palace also had eggs, but that was shrimp egg custard, shark fin egg custard, abalone egg custard, osmanthus, wolfberry and pearl egg custard. Who would eat this kind of sugar eggs? Gu Jiao ignored her and walked over. She put a bowl of steaming hot sugar eggs on the table next to the Empress Dowager's hand and whispered, I added half a spoon of brown sugar. She added more sugar. Empress Dowager Zhuang refused in her heart. She was the Empress Dowager of a country. How could she eat something so unrefined? She turned her face away coldly and tears flowed uncontrollably from the corner of her mouth. Empress Dowager Zhuang was about to take a nap. Gu Jiao and Zhuang Yueshi were invited to the side hall next door to rest. Gu Jiao's background was a bit unclear, but as long as the Empress Dowager didn't chase her away, the palace people didn't dare to do anything to her. You can leave too. Aijia doesn't like to have people serving me when I'm sleeping. Yes. The 2 little palace maids who were close to her also left. Empress Dowager Zhuang was the only one left in the huge bedroom. She was lying on the large and luxurious phoenix bed with her eyes half closed and her back facing the table. The window was wide open and a gentle breeze blew in. Gu Jiao put ginger in the sugar eggs. The smell of ginger mixed with brown sugar filled the entire bedroom. Empress Dowager Zhuang tossed and turned and couldn't fall asleep. Finally, she steeled her heart, sat up, and sat down at the table. She hugged a bowl of sweet and sour eggs and started slurping it. Suddenly, a small green figure hung down from the beam. Her head hung upside down outside the window and she called happily, Great Aunt. Empress Dowager Zhuang trembled and almost choked to death. There was no one else who had been caught eating sweet and sour eggs. Gu Jiao hung upside down. Blood rushed to the top of her head. Her little face was red and she looked cute. Empress Dowager Zhuang looked at her, and then looked again. Gu Jiao didn't hang for long. She put her hand on the windowsill and jumped in through the window. Empress Dowager Zhuang said without changing her expression. Ai Jia just didn't want to waste it. Gu Jiao nodded. Yes, yes, yes. Every grain is hard work. Empress Dowager Zhuang finished eating and wiped her mouth. She said seriously, it doesn't taste good. Gu Jiao looked at the bowl without any residue. Gu Jiao said again, Great Aunt, do you not remember what happened in Baishui Alley? Empress Dowager Zhuang was slightly startled. Then she said seriously, Ai Jia never remembers unimportant things. Oh. Gu Jiao came to Empress Dowager Zhuang's side. She knelt down on one knee and took her hand. She looked up at her. Great Aunt, I'll take you out of the palace. Empress Dowager Zhuang said lightly. What are you doing? Gu Jiao said. You're not happy in the palace. Empress Dowager Zhuang thought she would say, I'll take you out of the palace to help you find your past memories. This girl didn't care whether she would be remembered or not. Was she just thinking about whether she was happy or not? Empress Dowager Zhuang looked away and said coldly, Who said Ai Jia was not happy? Ai Jia is the most honorable woman in Zhao country. I am the Empress Dowager who has the power to overturn the court. In this world, Ai Jia can get whatever Ai Jia wants. Gu Jiao didn't say anything. She looked at her with heartache. She thought that she would be the most upset if her great-aunt forgot. But in fact, it was her great-aunt. Empress Dowager Zhuang didn't dare to look into Gu Jiao's clear eyes. She looked out the window and said coldly, Did the emperor send you again? What good to Ai Jia? You're just trying to bewitch Ai Jia again. Ai Jia might as well tell you the truth. Your trick. Before she finished speaking, she felt a warm and soft touch on her palm. She lowered her head and saw that the little girl had opened her hand and was burying her face in her palm. Her cheeks were soft, and there was baby fat that had yet to fade. His eyelashes were long and slender. Every time they fluttered, they swept across her palm and her heart. An hour later, Eunuch Qin came to wake Empress Dowager Zhuang up as usual. Empress Dowager Zhuang had been in the harem for decades. She was very strict with her work and rest. She didn't waste a moment. Empress Dowager, I'll come in to help you change. After Eunuch Qin finished reporting outside the door, he pushed the door and came in with a stack of gorgeous clothes. But when he came to Empress Dowager Zhuang's phoenix bed and saw the person on the bed, he was shocked. Before he could say the word, he felt two sharp eyes. He quickly turned around and bowed to Empress Dowager Zhuang, who was already dressed neatly. Empress Dowager. Empress Dowager Zhuang wasn't wearing a phoenix robe or an ordinary palace dress. Instead, she was wearing a set of coarse clothes. Eunuch Qin was dumbfounded. Empress Dowager Zhuang looked at Gu Jiao, who was sleeping soundly on the bed, and said calmly, Ai Jia has to go out of the palace. You should also change your clothes. Yes. Eunuch Qin agreed. As an old man by Empress Dowager Zhuang's side, he naturally didn't need Empress Dowager Zhuang to teach him what clothes to change into. Eunuch Qin often went out of the palace to buy things. He also had clothes outside the palace. He told Empress Dowager Zhuang to practice calligraphy in the study and not to disturb her. Then he secretly took Empress Dowager Zhuang out of the palace. In the carriage outside the palace, Eunuch Qin asked Empress Dowager Zhuang, Empress. Cough, old lady, where are we going now? Empress Dowager Zhuang looked at the vast sky outside the palace and breathed in the air that didn't belong to her. She murmured, Clearwater Alley. That girl seemed to have said so. Clearwater Alley was near the Imperial College. It was quite famous, and Eunuch Qin happened to know it. At this time, the night had fallen, and the streets were lit up with lights. This was her peaceful era, but this excitement didn't belong to her. It's in front. Eunuch Qin slowed down and was about to turn into the alley when Empress Dowager Zhuang suddenly said, Stop here. Yes. Eunuch Qin got out of the carriage and asked a young eunuch to watch the carriage. He helped Empress Dowager Zhuang down. The road in Clearwater Alley was originally a bit bumpy, but now it was filled with all kinds of strange materials. It seemed that every house had filled in a little bit. Huiyuan Road. Empress Dowager Zhuang suddenly said. Eunuch Qin was stunned. Empress Dowager. Are you going to give this road a name? I don't know. Empress Dowager Zhuang shook her head. It was just a momentary thought, and she didn't understand why she said so. She continued to walk forward, walking very slowly. Suddenly, someone opened the courtyard door and walked out of a house on the right. When she saw her, her eyes lit up. "Aunt Hua, I haven't seen you for a few days. You're back from visiting your relatives. Why were you gone for so long?" Empress Dowager Zhuang looked at her in a daze. Aunt Lu walked forward and took her hand. "You came at the right time. We need one more person." "How dare you?" Eunuch Qin gritted his teeth. Aunt Lu noticed Eunuch Qin. Who is this? Is he your nephew from your maternal family?" Eunuch Qin almost knelt down. He was a servant. How could he be related to the Empress Dowager? Wasn't this too much for him? "Coachman," Empress Dowager Zhuang said. "Strangely handsome." Aunt Lu's eyes lingered on Eunuch Qin's body. Eunuch Qin clamped his legs together. "I'm a eunuch." Empress Dowager Zhuang looked at the hand holding her wrist. In the palace, even the emperor didn't dare to touch her clothes. Aunt Lu didn't notice Empress Dowager Zhuang's strange behavior. It was mainly because she used to act like she was the best in the world and not to be trifled with. Everyone was used to it. She was cold on the outside but warm on the inside. "Hey, Aunt Zhao. Aunt Hua is back." "Aunt Hua is back." Aunt Zhao came out of the house and saw Empress Dowager Zhuang. She called into the house, "Liang Ge, go call your grandmother. Grandma Hua is back." "Hey." A child called Liang Ge quickly ran out of the Zhao house and returned to his own house. "Grandmother. Grandma Hua is back." For a moment, the entire Clearwater Alley was shocked. The days without the old lady to play cards with them were as lonely as the snow. A large group of people surrounded Empress Dowager Zhuang and asked her why she had been gone for so long. The children in the family were very anxious. They saw the little one looking at the door several times and asked him if he missed his great-aunt. He said no, but tears were rolling in his eyes. His aggrieved little appearance made them feel very distressed. The little one? Empress Dowager Zhuang pondered. That little bald head? Speak of the devil. Little Jing Kong happened to come out and look outside again. He stuck his little head out and looked innocent with his big watery eyes. He didn't know what happened in the alley. Why did everyone come out? Then he saw a person walk out of the crowd. It was his great-aunt. Little Jing Kong's eyes lit up. He was about to call out Grandaunt when he suddenly thought of something. Then he pursed his lips and ran back into the house. Aunt Zhao hurriedly said, Okay, go and coax her. I'll call you to play cards another day." Empress Dowager Zhuang was almost surrounded by people to the door. She was born to be a cut above others. She entered the palace at the age of 16 as the empress. Wherever she went, she was surrounded by thousands of people and admired by tens of thousands of people. However, they surrounded and admired her as the daughter of the noble Zhuang family, the virtuous Empress Dowager who was the mother of the world, and the powerful Empress Dowager. They were her many identities, but they were not her. Empress Dowager Zhuang entered the courtyard. A familiar smell came to her. She almost immediately concluded that she had lived here before. The bamboo in the front yard, the vegetable field, the small fish pond, the begonia tree, the doghouse, and the chicken coop in the backyard overlapped with the scene that lingered in her mind. Woof! Little Eighth happily pounced on her. Eunuch Qin's face changed. He opened his arms in front of her and said, "Protect the Empress." Little Eight rolled its eyes at him and jumped at the feet of the old lady. Soon the little eagle also flew down from the roof. Ah! Eunuch Qin was scared to death. That was an eagle. The little eagle fluttered its wings and landed on Empress Dowager Zhuang's shoulder. "Who has come?" Yao Shi came out of the room and saw Empress Dowager Zhuang dressed the same as the day she left home. Yao Shi's voice suddenly stopped. She was pregnant. It was not that she could see it. She should have known. You have returned?" Yao Shi did not know how to address her, nor did she know why she had come here. Yao Shi was a bit nervous. Empress Dowager Zhuang looked at a room in the corridor. Yao Shi looked back and quickly said, "Xiaoshan and Yenner have gone to learn. They have not returned yet." Empress Dowager Zhuang looked at the room across from her. Yao Shi said, "I have been tidying your room the entire time." "Her room?" Empress Dowager Zhuang calmly walked over. Eunuch Qin quickly walked forward and opened the door first. The sky was dark and there were no lamps in the room, but it was clear from north to south. It could be seen that it was a pretty good room, but it was a bit too small. It was not even as big as the Phoenix bed in Renshou Palace. Eunuch Qin's heart ached. Had the Empress Dowager been living in this kind of nook during this period of time? But Empress Dowager Zhuang did not dislike this place. Her fingertips brushed past the paint on the furniture. A deep sense of familiarity came from her fingertips and spread throughout her limbs. Little Jing Kong shut himself in his room. After a long time, his grandaunt did not come to coax him. He was worried that his grandaunt might have left again. He hurriedly opened the door of the west room a small crack and stuck his little head out to look around. As a result, he met Empress Dowager Zhuang's gaze. Little Jing Kong suddenly pulled his little head back and closed the door with a hum. Empress Dowager Zhuang went to the little guy's room. The little guy had his back to her and was hiding himself in the corner of a closet. "Come out," Empress Dowager Zhuang said. "I'm not coming out," Little Jing Kong angrily said. After saying this, he turned around and sneaked a glance at her. You will come out after feeding me." Once he acted spoiled, his words came out. 15 minutes later, Empress Dowager Zhuang and the little guy sat in the courtyard. There was a bowl of hot millet porridge on the small wooden table in front of the two. "Eat it yourself," Empress Dowager Zhuang said. Little Jing Kong's little mouth twitched. He raised his head and shouted at the top of his lungs, "Wah!" Empress Dowager Zhuang trembled and grabbed a spoonful of millet porridge and stuffed it into the little guy's mouth. The old chancellor and Xiao Lulang returned from the Imperial College and the Hanlin Academy. "You don't have to care about the Zhuang family. I'll think of a way to deal with them later." Before they finished speaking, the old chancellor and Xiao Lulang walked through the hall. He saw the old lady sitting on a small stool and feeding little Jing Kong. Why was it the old lady and not Empress Dowager Zhuang? Because she was wearing the old lady's clothes. The old chancellor had just received some money today. His first reaction was to pinch the money bag and say, "I didn't hide any money." Empress Dowager Zhuang glanced at him gloomily. The old chancellor fell to his knees. Little Jing Kong smacked his lips. "Granduncle, why did you fall?" "Granduncle?" Empress Dowager Zhuang's expression turned cold. The old chancellor's hair stood on end. "Ah, little monk, how can you deceive your granduncle like this?" No, I'm not your granduncle." "No, she's not your grandaunt." It seems that he didn't get to the point. "The late emperor. The relationship between the Empress Dowager and I is pure." Bang. The old chancellor was dragged into the small dark room by Empress Dowager Zhuang. It was a bit loud. Everyone thought, "We don't know and we don't dare to ask." Nanny Fong and Lu Quan were so scared by Empress Dowager Zhuang that they couldn't hold their knives. Gu Jiao and Gu Xiaoshan weren't here, so this dinner was made by Xiao Lulang. Empress Dowager Zhuang instinctively rejected it. She couldn't tell why, but she still raised her chopsticks and tasted it. This guy looked like a human, but why was his cooking so bad? Empress Dowager Zhuang's entire body trembled from the unpalatable taste. Her qi and blood surged, and the top of her head seemed to be about to be blown open by the chaotic qi and blood. Her head hurt again and sweat seeped out of her forehead. At this time, Xiao Lulang looked at her deeply and suddenly said, "Has Grandaunt's injury recovered?" "Jiao Jiao hasn't. She was seriously injured and almost lost her life." "She was seriously injured, she almost died." "Old lady, where are you from? Do you still remember what illness you had?" "So little, only 3. Candied fruit is very expensive. If you don't want to eat it, then forget it." "Is this how you talk to your grandaunt?" "I'm going to sell mountain goods. I've heated the food in the pot. If you're hungry, eat it yourself. There's also medicine. If you throw it away, I'll know." "Jiao Jiao. Jiao Jiao. Be good and come to Grandaunt." "Grandaunt, I'll take you home." "Okay." Renshou Palace. Zhuang Yueshi wandered outside the Empress Dowager's bedroom for a long time, but she didn't see the Empress Dowager come out. There were 2 strong eunuchs guarding the door. She hesitated for a moment, walked forward and asked, "Eunuchs, it's late. We should remind the Empress Dowager to eat." One of the eunuchs said, "The Empress Dowager ordered that no one is to disturb her unless she comes out herself." Otherwise, we can't disturb her. Zhuang Yueshi asked. But it's so late. What if the Empress Dowager is hungry? The other eunuch smiled and said, Miss Zhuang, don't worry. If the Empress Dowager is hungry, she will send for the food. Moreover, there is no shortage of food inside. How can those snacks fill the stomach? Zhuang Yueshi looked worried. What Zhuang Yueshi didn't say was that she was really worried about the girl surnamed Gu. That girl was also in Renshou Palace, but in the blink of an eye, she disappeared. She seriously suspected that the girl had entered the Empress Dowager's bedroom. What would she do in the Empress Dowager's bedroom? What would she say to the Empress Dowager? Would she rack her brains to remind the Empress Dowager of the past year's events? She was not stupid. How could she not see that the Empress Dowager gave her things that she didn't really like? The way the Empress Dowager liked her was also not her original. How many bewitching potions did the girl feed the Empress Dowager? She didn't believe that the girl didn't have any ulterior motives. Zhuang Yueshi said softly. Eunuchs, please help me pass the message. The Empress Dowager loves me so much. If she knows that I have been worrying about her outside, she will be unhappy. As soon as she said this, the two eunuchs hesitated. Empress Dowager Zhuang was a very principled person. However, they all saw how much the Empress Dowager doted on Zhuang Yueshi recently. Not only did she give her the best treasures, but she also built a mansion for her. She obviously treated her like a princess and loved her dearly. If Miss Zhuang was really tired out outside, Empress Dowager Zhuang would blame them, the servants who would suffer. However, they didn't dare to openly disobey the Empress Dowager's order. Zhuang Yueshi said, Or you can let me in directly. If anything happens, I will take responsibility. Please don't worry. With me around, I will not let the Empress Dowager make things difficult for you. The two eunuchs exchanged a look and nodded in agreement. Zhuang Yueshi carried a plate of freshly baked rose pastry into the bedroom. The palace servants in the bedchamber had all been dismissed. The palace hall was quiet. The moonlight poured down like water and hung on the floor. It was beautiful and dazzling. A slightly bulging figure could be faintly seen on the bed. Zhuang Yueshi was about to go forward and bow when she saw the other person's face clearly. She gasped and was so shocked that she almost dropped the plate in her hand. How could it be her? Why was she sleeping on the Empress Dowager's phoenix bed? She had never slept on it before. She didn't even dare to touch it. This girl was so daring. She dared to secretly climb onto the Empress Dowager's phoenix bed. There would be a good show to watch now. Zhuang Yueshi wasn't so kind to remind Gu Jiao. She hoped that Gu Jiao would continue to sleep. It would be best if she could sleep until she called the Empress Dowager over. However, Zhuang Yueshi didn't expect that when she turned around, she stepped on her skirt. She lost her balance and fell towards Gu Jiao, who was on the phoenix bed. The plate in her hand fell to the ground and smashed into pieces. The crisp sound woke Gu Jiao up. Before Gu Jiao could understand what happened, she saw a shadow coming towards her. Gu Jiao instinctively slapped the shadow. Suddenly, there was a loud slap in the bedchamber. Zhuang Yueshi was sent flying by the slap. She crashed into the cabinet of treasures on the opposite side. The porcelain and jade items on the cabinet fell to the ground, including the Empress Dowager's phoenix seal that was hidden in the makeup box. Empress Dowager Zhuang was powerful. Her phoenix seal was as valuable as the imperial jade seal. Destroying the phoenix seal was a death sentence. It was much more serious than climbing onto the phoenix bed. Zhuang Yueshi was stunned when she saw the phoenix seal break into two pieces in front of her. At this moment, Empress Dowager Zhuang returned to the palace. She had changed her clothes in the side hall. The dignified and solemn black phoenix robe was slowly reflected on the floor. It made her look even more domineering. Aya! Phoenix seal. Eunuch Qin looked at the mess on the floor and changed his expression. Zhuang Yueshi rushed over and knelt in front of Empress Dowager Zhuang. She pointed at Gu Jiao, who was on the phoenix bed, and said, Empress Dowager. It's her. She climbed onto your phoenix bed when you were not around. I kindly asked her to get up, but she slapped my face. I was slapped by her and hit the cabinet. That's why the phoenix seal fell off. Empress Dowager Zhuang narrowed her eyes. You mean, she hit you? Zhuang Yueshi heard the dangerous tone and was happy. Yes, Empress Dowager. My face is swollen because of her. It was indeed swollen. It was very swollen. His mouth was also broken and bleeding a little. Empress Dowager Zhuang glanced at Zhuang Yuexi's swollen face and looked at Gu Jiao. Who hit you? Zhuang Yuexi was secretly happy. You are dead. Just wait for Empress Dowager to break your hand. Gu Jiao raised her right hand pitifully. She used the back of her hand to slap her, and there was a red mark on it. Empress Dowager Zhuang looked at the back of her hand that was slightly red and her eyes became cold. Digression. It's almost the end of the month. Are there still monthly tickets? The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more complete. Millions of novels are free to read. All the novels that you can't find online are available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_89642826/1126499978. HTML Genius memorized the website address www.zhbqg.com. Bikugo mobile reading website zhbqg.com. Chapter 273. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that cannot be found online are available here. Zhuang Yuexi noticed that Empress Dowager Zhuang suddenly became cold. She thought that the girl was really dead. The Empress Dowager was really angry. Even the emperor could not save her today. However, what Zhuang Yuexi did not expect was that Empress Dowager Zhuang did not get angry. Empress Dowager Zhuang stared at Gu Jiao's outstretched hand. After a while, her eyes became colder and colder. But why don't you get angry? Empress Dowager Zhuang closed her eyes and took a deep breath to suppress her anger. Zhuang Yuexi was excited. It was coming, it was coming. Who allowed you to come in? Empress Dowager Zhuang shouted. Yes, who allowed you to come in? Zhuang Yuexi was proud, but she soon noticed that something was wrong. Why were Eunuch Qin and the others all looking at her? Her heart skipped a beat for no reason. She looked at Empress Dowager Zhuang and realized in hindsight that those words seemed to be directed at her. Empress Dowager. Was she blaming her for trespassing? Why? Wasn't the girl the one who trespassed first? She even climbed onto Empress Dowager's phoenix bed. That girl was still on the bed and hadn't come down yet. Empress Dowager did not punish her, but scolded her own grandniece? What kind of logic was this? Before Zhuang Yuexi could figure it out, Empress Dowager Zhuang spoke again. Her voice was dignified and cold as usual. Who is guarding the bedroom today? Eunuch Qin quickly said. Empress Dowager, it's Xiaoli and Xiaoda. Empress Dowager Zhuang did not even lift her eyelids and said mercilessly. Flog them 20 times and kick them out of Renshou Palace. I don't want to see them again. Zhuang Yuexi's body trembled. It was she who asked Eunuch Li and Eunuch Da to let her in. She also promised them that if anything happened, she would take responsibility. But in the end, she got them into trouble. Empress Dowager Zhuang might not know that she asked them to do this, but Empress Dowager Zhuang still did it. This was killing the chicken to warn the monkey. Empress Dowager, please. Outside the bedchamber, before the two of them could utter a complete sentence, they were gagged by Eunuch Qin and dragged away to be executed. This was the imperial palace. There was no room for any mistakes. The Empress Dowager had done the same in the past. Everyone only saw her glorious side, but they didn't know how hard it was for her to take every step of the bloody road. Was the Empress Dowager born so decisive and fierce? It was only because she had suffered too many losses and many people had died that she stepped on the bones and ascended to the Empress Dowager's phoenix throne. Did Eunuch Qin sympathize with them? No sympathy. Today, they only listened to Zhuang Yuexi's words. If they were to listen to their opponent's bewitchment one day, who would be the one to die? Outside, there was the sound of beating. With every beat, Zhuang Yuexi's face turned paler. In the end, when Eunuch Qin returned to report, Zhuang Yuexi's face was completely pale. She looked at herself kneeling by the Empress Dowager's feet, and then looked at Gu Jiao sitting comfortably on the Empress Dowager's phoenix bed. For a moment, she didn't understand what had gone wrong. She was the daughter of the Zhuang family. That girl was just the mud in the dust. Empress Dowager Zhuang spoke in a deep voice. Why are you standing here? Do you still need me to teach you what to do? You trespassed into my bedchamber and broke my phoenix seal. What? Are you still waiting for me to reward you? You should be glad that your surname is Zhuang. Otherwise, even if you had 10 heads, it wouldn't be enough for me to chop them off. Empress Dowager. Zhuang Yuexi was so scared that she knelt on the ground. Empress Dowager Zhuang looked away and said indifferently, Go back to the Zhuang family. Reflect on your mistakes behind closed doors. Zhuang Yuexi felt wronged. Isn't the phoenix seal? Empress Dowager Zhuang interrupted her coldly. It's you who are dead. These words were too hurtful. In front of the palace servants and Gu Jiao, Zhuang Yuexi felt like she was slapped in the face. The punishment of closing the door was not terrible. What was terrible was losing face in front of the people who looked down on her. Gu Jiao's slap only landed on Zhuang Yuexi's face. The Empress Dowager's slap landed on Zhuang Yuexi's self-esteem. Zhuang Yuexi felt wronged to the extreme. Tears began to roll in her eyes. Yes, Yuexi will leave now. Empress Dowager, please take care of your body. Yuexi will visit you another day. Empress Dowager Zhuang said lightly, Don't come without my summons. Zhuang Yuexi thought, I was just being polite. Is it necessary to be so ruthless? Zhuang Yuexi left the palace awkwardly. The Zhuang sisters entered the palace a few days earlier to serve the Empress Dowager. Because the Empress Dowager only favored Zhuang Yuexi, Zhuang Mingdai felt bored. She packed up and went home early, which saved her from embarrassment. Eunuch Qin brought the cleaning maids in and cleaned up the mess on the ground. A lamp was lit in the bedchamber. Maybe it was because there was a little girl on the phoenix bed. Although it was out of place, it unexpectedly made people feel that there was a trace of vitality in the cold and strict palace. Gu Jiao sat on the bed and played with her fingers. She did not know whether she should get down or not. Empress Dowager Zhuang sat on the bed and stared at the back of her red hand. She did not speak. Eunuch Qin walked over with sharp eyes and said to Gu Jiao with a smile, Miss, your hand is injured. I have some medicine for wounds here. Apply some for you. Gu Jiao looked at her hand strangely. Where is it injured? I don't have it. Empress Dowager Zhuang's eyes were cold. Gu Jiao looked at her, and then at Eunuch Qin. Eunuch Qin winked at her. Gu Jiao said, Oh. She stretched out her little hand. Okay. Eunuch Qin made a gesture of wanting to apply medicine for Gu Jiao, but he suddenly seemed to think of something. He patted his head and said, Look at this servant. I just finished cleaning. My hands are not clean. I will have to trouble the Empress Dowager to apply medicine for the miss. Look, this was what it meant to be a smart person. Eunuch Qin did not seem to be embarrassed at all. He had spoken harshly to Gu Jiao. His face was not worth anything to him. Eunuch Qin gave the medicine to Empress Dowager Zhuang, and then left with the palace people. The Empress Dowager also knew how to care for people. Why didn't she know before? But it seemed that the Empress Dowager did not want her unknown side to be known. Only Gu Jiao and Empress Dowager Zhuang were left in the room. Gu Jiao thought for a moment and handed her hand to Empress Dowager Zhuang. Quickly apply the medicine. It would be better if she did not apply it. Empress Dowager Zhuang. The back of Gu Jiao's hand was really fine. After Empress Dowager Zhuang applied some cooling ointment, she said to her, Turn around. Gu Jiao was slightly stunned. Empress Dowager Zhuang said in a deep voice, I just said turn around. Oh. Gu Jiao obediently turned around. Empress Dowager Zhuang gently lifted her nightgown. Gu Jiao's little body stiffened. She was about to turn around when she heard Empress Dowager Zhuang say, Don't move. Gu Jiao did not move. Gu Jiao's back was covered with scars. The swelling had disappeared, but there were still large patches of blue and purple. The scars had formed a thick scab, and the skin around the scab was slightly red. If she did not scratch it, it would itch. If she scratched it, it would hurt. Gu Jiao usually endured it. She did not say a word about how the scars came about. She also acted as if nothing had happened in front of Empress Dowager Zhuang. Empress Dowager Zhuang thought about how she would cook and hang upside down on the roof. She would laugh in front of her without a care in the world. Her heart inexplicably felt suffocated. She dipped her fingertips in medicine and gently applied it to her scars. Aya! Gu Jiao's body trembled, and she unconsciously dodged to the side. Does it hurt? Empress Dowager Zhuang asked nervously. It itches, Gu Jiao said. The scabs were the most itchy when they fell off. Empress Dowager Zhuang could not help her with this. She could only apply more ointment to cool her down. Gu Jiao sat cross-legged on the phoenix bed, letting her grandaunt apply the ointment. Suddenly, she thought of something and asked, Great-aunt, have you remembered something? Empress Dowager Zhuang's hand paused and she said seriously, No. Oh. Gu Jiao was disappointed. After applying the ointment, Empress Dowager Zhuang had someone bring in the food. Gu Jiao was indeed hungry. She rarely took an afternoon nap, but unexpectedly, she slept until night. She looked at the exquisite and delicious dishes on the table. There was a plate of meat with sesame scattered on it. She and her grandaunt were the same when it came to loving sesame. This was clearly the meat that Xiao Luleng took from his fellow students at the Imperial College. The taste was the same. Grandaunt, you really don't remember? Gu Jiao ate the meat and looked at Empress Dowager Zhuang with some suspicion. This was clearly her favorite food. Empress Dowager Zhuang lightly said, Eat your food. Why are you talking so much? Gu Jiao continued to eat. The dishes in the palace were very sumptuous. Gu Jiao even ate crab. The crab meat and crab paste were all removed, and then put back into the crab shell. The organs that should be removed were all removed. With a chopstick, it was full of crab paste and crab meat. Grandaunt, why aren't you eating? Gu Jiao asked. Jia has already eaten. Empress Dowager Zhuang said. She had indeed eaten, and it was Xiaolulong's dark cuisine. Empress Dowager Zhuang was really disgusting. She didn't want to eat for the next 3 days. Gu Jiao thought about it, and took out a small paper bag from her purse. After opening it, there were 3 candied fruits. Grandaunt, do you eat this? Eat a little after a meal. You won't get indigestion. Empress Dowager Zhuang cleared her throat, and took it with a look of disgust. She didn't want Gu Jiao to see her saliva. It was the taste in her memory. It was sweet and sour with a faint plum fragrance. It was different from the candied fruits in the palace. It wasn't as sweet, but it was unexpectedly delicious. After eating the 3 candied fruits, Empress Dowager Zhuang still wanted more. Gu Jiao blinked and asked, Is it a familiar taste? Empress Dowager Zhuang said seriously, There are only 3. How can you tell? That's true. Gu Jiao hesitated and took out a small paper bag from her purse. There were still 3 candied fruits inside. Empress Dowager Zhuang silently looked at the candied fruits, and then looked at Gu Jiao's purse. That purse was personally embroidered by Empress Dowager Zhuang. It was Gu Jiao's 15th birthday present. It was embroidered with 2 quails and a few quail eggs. In fact, she wanted to embroider mandarin ducks. However, the embroidery was not satisfactory and ended up with quails. How did she give away such a stupid thing? Empress Dowager Zhuang disliked it very much. Sure enough, when a person's brain was damaged, they would do stupid things. This was the dark history of Empress Dowager Zhuang's life. Empress Dowager Zhuang also finished the 3 candied fruits. When she was still an old lady, Gu Jiao only allowed Empress Dowager Zhuang to eat 3 candied fruits a day. She was only allowed to eat 5 during the new year. If she wanted to eat more, she had to find a way to hide it. However, she couldn't hide too much because little Jing Kong loved to investigate her. If he found out, he would complain. Empress Dowager Zhuang was still not satisfied after eating 6 candied fruits. She snorted and said, What familiar? I didn't taste anything. Try a few more. Gu Jiao looked at her suspiciously and said, Great-aunt, you didn't do it on purpose just to get a few candied fruits, did you? Empress Dowager Zhuang choked and said, How is that possible? In the end, Empress Dowager Zhuang did not manage to eat the 7th candied fruit. Not only that, but before Gu Jiao left, She instructed eunuch Qin not to allow Empress Dowager Zhuang to eat sweets. She could not eat fruits with high sugar content. She had to abstain from certain foods. Eunuch Qin agreed with a smile. Empress Dowager Zhuang's face turned black. After Zhuang Yueshi returned to the Zhuang family crying, Grand Tutor Zhuang asked her what happened. Did something happen to the Empress Dowager? Why did she cry like this? When the Empress Dowager was sent to the palace to recuperate, Zhuang Yueshi didn't shed a single tear. Zhuang Yueshi felt wronged and said, the Empress Dowager drove me out of the palace. Grand Tutor Zhuang was puzzled and asked, why? Zhuang Yueshi told him about how she caught Gu Jiao climbing onto the phoenix bed, and how she was slapped by Gu Jiao and broke the seal. She was the one in the wrong. She was the one who hit me, so I bumped into her. But the Empress Dowager blamed me. Grand Tutor Zhuang frowned and asked, doesn't the Empress Dowager love you? How could it be? How could Zhuang Yueshi say that the Empress Dowager didn't love her, but that girl? But it was strange. The Empress Dowager was not so obvious during the day. At night, the Empress Dowager seemed to be a different person. Something must have happened. She told him her doubts. Grand Tutor Zhuang was silent for a long time and said, I know. You go back to your room first. I will go to the palace to see the Empress Dowager tomorrow. Yes. Zhuang Yueshi agreed, and went back to her room with red eyes. The next day, after the morning court, Grand Tutor Zhuang followed Empress Dowager Zhuang and said, Empress Dowager. Empress Dowager Zhuang raised her hand. The palace maid who was kneeling beside her understood and said softly, stop. The phoenix carriage stopped near the throne room. Grand Tutor Zhuang bowed and said, Empress Dowager, can we talk in private? Empress Dowager Zhuang flicked her wide sleeves and said, speak. There is no one here who cannot listen. Yes. Grand Tutor Zhuang looked at the expressionless palace servants and eunuch Qin. He stepped forward and approached the high and mighty Feng Ai and said, she caused trouble in the palace. I have already taught her a lesson when she came back. Empress Dowager, please calm down. Speak human language. Empress Dowager Zhuang said lightly. Empress Dowager Zhuang did not like to beat around the bush with people, unless it was necessary. But it was clear that there was no need to do so with her own brother. Grand Tutor Zhuang sighed and said, I have asked Shir about yesterday's matter. She was indeed wrong and should not have barged into the Empress Dowager's bedroom. However, she is the Empress Dowager's niece. Empress Dowager punishing her in front of so many servants and a commoner girl. Isn't this not giving her a way out? Empress Dowager Zhuang said, she is not a commoner girl. She is the daughter of Marquis Ding, and Fu and the wife of the new top scorer. Grand Tutor Zhuang. Is this the main point? Empress Dowager Zhuang continued. Also, she dared to fake Aijia's imperial edict. How can Aijia give her a way out? Grand Tutor Zhuang did not know about the fake imperial edict. If it was real, then it was not a small matter. This was the same as faking the emperor's imperial edict. It was an unforgivable crime. Empress Dowager Zhuang. She dared to tell Jiao Jiao that Aijia did not want Jiao Jiao. Why doesn't she go to heaven? Grand Tutor Zhuang had originally come to denounce Zhuang Yueshi, but he ended up being checkmated instead. It was extremely awkward. Naturally, he blamed Zhuang Yueshi for not telling him the truth, but he was also very curious about the girl's ending. Grand Tutor Zhuang looked at the Empress Dowager in the Phoenix sedan and said, May I ask how the Empress Dowager dealt with that girl? He did not care about the wife of the top scorer. He did not care about the daughter of the Marquis Fu. The main point was that she climbed onto the Phoenix bed and smashed the Phoenix seal. She deserved to die. Does Aijia need to tell you what she does? Empress Dowager Zhuang shot him a cold gaze. Grand Tutor Zhuang instantly did not dare to speak. He squeezed his fingers and said, Then this official will leave first. Wait. Empress Dowager Zhuang stopped him. You came at the right time. Aijia remembered something. Aijia recently gave your granddaughter a lot of things. Return them all to Aijia. Grand Tutor Zhuang staggered and almost fell. Did he hear wrongly? She actually wanted them to return the things that the Empress Dowager gave out? You are the Empress Dowager of a country. Can you do this? The original Empress Dowager Zhuang naturally would not do such a disgraceful thing. But she was now the Empress Dowager Zhuang who had lived a hard life. Her Jiao had even gone to the market to buy mountain goods to support her family. What was her status? Could it be eaten? She earned money with her own ability. Why should she give it to someone she should not give it to? She wanted it back. So what? Grand Tutor Zhuang almost spat out blood. So why did he come to find her? If he did not look for her, she would not have remembered. Grand Tutor Zhuang returned to the mansion. Zhuang Yueshi was full of joy as she waited for her grandfather to seek justice for her. She did not expect her grandfather to hesitate. Grandfather, what happened? What did the Empress Dowager say? She asked. Grand Tutor Zhuang coughed lightly and said, The Empress Dowager wants you to return the things she gave you. Zhuang Yueshi's face turned pale. What? Grand Tutor Zhuang also felt that he was wronged. He said embarrassedly, Didn't you say that you don't like it? When did she say that she did not like it? She only said that it was different from her previous preferences. Furthermore, it was one thing to not like it. It was another thing for the Empress Dowager to take it back. Zhuang Yueshi thought of something and said in shock, Then what about the princess mansion in the south of the city? The Empress Dowager will not take it back, will she? Eunuch Qin, who was ordered by the Empress Dowager to take the things, heard this at the door. He turned to the eunuch accompanying him and said, Go back and ask the Empress Dowager if she wants to take back the new mansion? Zhuang Yueshi. Why did she have to say that? Digression, in the middle of the night I climbed up to look at the monthly ticket. It was 7,878. Did you do it on purpose? Do you dare to make it 7,888? The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that cannot be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_896422826/1126238889. HTML Genius remembered the website address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg.com Bikuga mobile reading website. zhhbqg.com. Chapter 274. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that cannot be found on the internet are available here. The news that Zhuang Yueshi was humiliated by the Empress Dowager was not spread out so quickly. However, the Empress Dowager's phoenix seal was broken. The phoenix on it fell and Eunuch Qin took it to the imperial palace to fix it. In addition, Zhuang Yueshi moved out of the palace at this time. Everyone guessed that she might have broken the phoenix seal. However, it was not easy to find out about the Rinshou Palace. The Zhuang family also kept quiet about it. Therefore, there was no confirmation. Xiao Lulang knew nothing about the palace. He left the palace and his expression was not good. It was not because he was ostracized by his colleagues, nor was it because the chancellor secretly made things difficult for him. It was because he saw Lu Quan waiting by the roadside when he left the Hanlin Academy. What's wrong? He remembered that he told Lu Quan that he would walk back on his own without picking him up. Lu Quan said awkwardly, It's Jing Kong. Something happened. To be exact, the little guy's parents were called again. Xiao Lulang had a toothache. How many times had this happened this semester? It had only been a few months since the incident of a big bird eating a small bird. Why was he in trouble again so soon? Xiao Lulang took a deep breath and said slowly, Which classmate was bullied by him again? He was clearly the youngest in the elementary school, but every time, he could bully those who were a few years older until they cried. It was not entirely true that he did it on purpose. In short, this little thing had a kind of invisible talent to make people cry. Lu Quan said embarrassedly, No, not a classmate. It's a teacher. Teacher Sunday. Xiao Liulang's eyebrows twitched. The little guy bullied a teacher? Was he trying to betray his teacher? Xiao Lulang also understood why Lu Quan came to the Hanlin Academy. This was indeed a serious matter. Lu Quan could not explain the specific situation. Xiao Lulang went directly to the Meng school and met the governor in charge of the school. His surname was Ouyang. Xiao Lulang was this year's top scorer, and he had studied at the directorate's easygoing hall. Ouyang Xuezheng had long heard of him, so he greeted him politely. Xiao Lulang put down his walking stick and cupped his hands. What is it this time? Ouyang Xuezheng wanted to say something but hesitated. After a long while he said helplessly, "You go take a look for yourself." Xiao Lulang was led by Ouyang Xuezheng to Teacher Sun's office. This was the place where Teacher Sun dealt with school affairs. It was not far from the classroom of the prodigy class. After passing through a corridor and turning a corner, they arrived. Before Xiao Lulang arrived, he heard the shouts inside. At first he was stunned, but then he realized that it was Teacher Sun who was shouting. Xiao Liulang's temples twitched again. What on earth did his brat do to be able to agitate Teacher Sun to this extent? Little Jing Kong is in the classroom. Let me take you to see Teacher Sun first. Ouyang Xuezheng said awkwardly and raised his hand to knock on the unlocked door. The shouts in the room stopped abruptly. After a while the door was opened. The person who opened the door was the former teacher of Little Jing Kong, Teacher Jiang. After Teacher Jiang was transferred to the 6th hall of the directorate to teach, he almost never came to the elementary school. Just now, he was comforting Teacher Sunday. Obviously, the effect of the comforting was not satisfactory. Teacher Sun could vent his emotions in front of his old friends, but he could not lose his self-control in front of Ouyang Xuezheng and the students' parents. He tidied up and came out from behind the screen with eyes swollen like walnuts. Teacher Jiang knew Xiao Lulang. When Little Jing Kong first got into trouble, Teacher Jiang was there. At that time, he tried his best to protect Little Jing Kong, and did not hesitate to offend Qin Chuyu, who was a prince. This made Xiao Lulang have a good impression of him. Xiao Lulang saluted him with one hand in the other. Teacher Jiang. Teacher Jiang politely returned the salute. He did not beat around the bush with Xiao Lulang and directly told him what happened. It turned out that today's lesson was arithmetic. Teacher Sun explained a problem and expanded it to the ancestral ratio. Little Jing Kong said that Teacher Sun was wrong and said it in front of all the students. In fact, he was not wrong, Teacher Jiang said. The ancestral ratio was 22:7, and the secret law was 355/113. It was accurate to the last 7 digits of the derivative. This was recorded in the 10 Sutras of Arithmetical Classics. Xiao Lulang had also been studying the 10 Sutras of Arithmetical Classics recently, so he knew that the ancestral ratio was indeed this number. Why did he say that Teacher Sun was wrong? Did Teacher Sun show him the 10 Sutras of Arithmetical Classics? Little Jing Kong was a strict child. As long as he found the source, he would not pester endlessly. That was the problem. Teacher Sun took out the 10 Sutras of Arithmetical Classics and showed it to him, but he said that it was not accurate enough. He said a long string of numbers in one breath, at least 17 or 18 digits of the derivative. He directly stunned Teacher Sunday. Teacher Sun thought that he was disrupting the class. Little Jing Kong said that Teacher Sun was misleading the students. In order to prove his point, he dug a hole for Teacher Sun and threw 10 arithmetic problems at him in one breath. In the end, Teacher Sun could not solve a single problem. If he could not solve it, it meant that Teacher Sun's knowledge was not good enough. If his knowledge was not good enough, it meant that there was also a problem with the ancestral ratio that Teacher Sun taught. Teacher Sun was misleading the students. This was Little Jing Kong's logic. In fact, one could not generalize like this. Teacher Sun could not solve those problems because those problems were beyond Teacher Sun's knowledge. One could not say that the points within Teacher Sun's knowledge were also wrong. However, Little Jing Kong was the king of the children in the class. Everyone in the class responded to his call. Little Jing Kong gave 10 questions, but Teacher Sun could not solve a single one. After that, Teacher Sun gave Little Jing Kong another 10 questions, and Little Jing Kong solved at least 5 of them. Then Little Jing Kong said indifferently, "What's so strange about me not being able to solve the remaining questions? I'm a student. I came here to study because I don't know how to solve them. If I know how to solve them, Why do I still need a teacher? Listen to his infuriating tone. Teacher Sun lost all his face. He grabbed the ferrule and hit little Jing Kong's palm. In the end, he did not hit him and fell down. The whole class roared with laughter. The scene was like a large-scale car accident in the Imperial College. It was said that the students from the other 4 classes all came to watch. The whole school knew about Teacher Sun's embarrassing appearance. It was no wonder that Teacher Sun was so angry that he cried. It was really embarrassing. Teacher Jiang said earnestly, "Don't be in a hurry to scold Jing Kong. Although he was wrong to target Teacher Sun, he did not use you to support himself. He is different from those rich playboys." "Thank you, Teacher Jiang. I will talk to him." Xiao Lulang thanked Teacher Jiang sincerely. Then he apologized to Teacher Sunday. He turned around and went to the classroom to bring the little fellow out. "Tell me, why did you bully Teacher Sun?" Xiao Lulang asked. The two of them stood behind a large tree, the thick and solid tree trunk perfectly blocking their figures. Little Jing Kong said seriously, "Brother-in-law, what you said is wrong. How can this be called bullying?" He said it wrongly. He is not knowledgeable, but he doesn't admit it. He doesn't humbly ask for advice. Doesn't he know that there is always someone to learn from? If he is wrong, then he is wrong. Can't he just admit it? If he knows he is wrong, then he can change for the better. When scholar Xiangshan wrote a poem, he knew to read it to the shepherd boy and the old woman. He would not look down on children. When it came to reasoning, he quoted from many sources. Xiao Lulang was originally very angry, but when he heard this, he suddenly felt like laughing. Perhaps this was the difference between his own child and other people's children. He was clearly wrong, but he was still pleasantly surprised by his every bit of improvement. Xiao Lulang asked, "Who told you the story of scholar Xiangshan?" Little Jing Kong snorted, "Son-in-law. He could learn and use it flexibly." Okay. However, Xiao Lulang knew him very well. This kid was a bully. He said, "This is not a reason for you to bully Teacher Sun in front of everyone. Are you going to tell me yourself, or do you want to tell me in front of Jiao Jiao later?" When Gu Jiao was mentioned, little Jing Kong became listless. Xiao Lulang was very good at poking at people's weak spots. After little Jing Kong was caught, he obediently confessed his motive. The cause of the incident was that little Jing Kong brought the baby eagle to school and almost bit off Qin Chiyu's manhood. Teacher Sun did not protect him like Teacher Jiang did. Instead, he timidly handed him over. He was very disappointed in Teacher Sunday. From then on, he already felt that Teacher Sun was not worthy of being his teacher. Xiao Lulang did not expect the little guy to be so vengeful. Xiao Lulang considered his words carefully and said to him, "Teacher Sun did do something wrong. He should not have lowered his head to power. However, have you ever thought that not everyone has to be as brave as Teacher Jiang?" "Why not?" Little Jing Kong did not understand. Xiao Lulang didn't know how to explain it to him. Perhaps it was because the people he came into contact with were all extremely brave people, so he had an established understanding. Everyone should be righteous, brave, and fearless. However, in fact, self-protection was a person's instinct. One day, when he left Gu Jiao in his home and went to a wider place, he would find that people like Teacher Sun were the people he met the most. Teacher Sun did not mean to harm him. He also worked hard to teach him. To be fair, he was an excellent teacher in all aspects, except for his incompetence in dealing with the baby eagle. Xiao Lulang patted his little bald head and said, "You can have higher standards for yourself, but lower standards for others." "Why?" Little Jing Kong still did not understand. Xiao Lulang thought for a while and said, "Because they may not be as good as you." This was the first time that the bad brother-in-law praised little Jing Kong. Little Jing Kong's numerous words of debate were stuck in his throat. His throat was dry, his palms were hot, and his cheeks were red. Who is good?" The little guy looked up at the sky and walked away with his hands and feet. Finally, under Xiao Liulang's mediation, little Jing Kong came to Teacher Sun and apologized for his provocation. In fact, he felt a little wronged, because he was right about the ancestral rate. Teacher Sun accepted little Jing Kong's apology. Just when he thought that Xiao Lulang was finally going to take the little bastard away, Xiao Lulang suddenly said seriously, About the ancestral rate, I will try my best to verify it. If Jing Kong is right, then I hope Teacher Sun can also apologize to Jing Kong, because you have wronged him. As soon as he said this, Teacher Sun was stunned. Who would stand up for a child like this? Was he crazy to calculate the ancestral rate? Who did he think he was? Even little Jing Kong did not expect his bad brother-in-law to say this. Although he did not know whether it was difficult to calculate the ancestral rate, his bad brother-in-law was willing to believe him. Teacher Sun gradually recovered from the shock. He did not believe that Xiao Lulang could calculate the ancestral rate to 7 digits, so he accepted the bet without any pressure. After sitting in the carriage, little Jing Kong curled his lips and said, "What if I am wrong?" Xiao Lulang did not care and said, "Then I will go and apologize to Teacher Sunday. What's the big deal? What's the big deal? How embarrassing." Little Jing Kong was silent for a moment, then suddenly moved closer to Xiao Lulang. Xiao Lulang looked at him and said, "What's wrong?" Little Jing Kong took a deep breath, clenched his fists and said, "I will let you hug me." His bad brother-in-law stood up for him because he was obsessed with his charm and could not help himself. Then he would sacrifice himself. Xiao Lulang looked at him strangely. "Thank you, but I don't want to hug you." When Xiao Lulang and little Jing Kong returned to Bishui Alley, Gu Jiao, Gu Yan, and Gu Xiaoshan were not back yet. Gu Jiao took a job at the clinic, so she went to see patients. As for Gu Yan and Gu Xiaoshan, they were learning at their master's house. When they were eating at his master's house, Gu Yan felt that his master's wife looked at Gu Xiaoshan strangely. He wanted to say something, but Gu Xiaoshan was so engrossed in eating that he did not notice it at all. After getting on the carriage, Gu Yan asked Gu Xiaoshan, "Do you feel that your master's wife treats you differently recently?" Gu Xiaoshan was shocked and said, "Ah, what's the difference? Master's wife doesn't like me anymore?" Gu Yan thought, "Obviously she likes you too much. That look in her eyes is as if she wants to pack you up and bring you back to her house, never letting you go again." Gu Yan said seriously, "I think she likes you. You have to be careful. I am afraid that master will get jealous and take revenge on you." Gu Xiaoshan. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel is updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. There are all kinds of novels that you can't find online. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_8964226/11262127. HTML Genius memorized the website's address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg.com Bikugo mobile reading website. zhhbqg. Com. Chapter 275. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are all available here. The place where Gu Jiao went to see patients today was a 3-story house in the east of the city. The old master in the house was a scholar and taught at the nearby academy. The madam's family was quite wealthy, so their family background was not bad. The patient this time was their eldest son. He was 20 years old this year, and had just passed the county-level examination. The family was very happy, but unfortunately, he had contracted a serious illness a few days ago. They sent him to a nearby clinic, but they were turned away, saying that it was smallpox and that he should stay at home to be treated. The clinic had prescribed medicine, but after taking it for a few days, they did not get better. They had heard from a student at the academy that the Miracle Hands Hall had good medical skills, so they went to ask for help. Who knew that it would be a female doctor? The husband and wife were disappointed. Gu Jiao had been practicing medicine for a long time, so she was used to this kind of look. There were no female doctors in Jiao country, so the status of female doctors was low. It was not something that she could change with just a few accidents. She did not have any ambition to be a great person. Gu Jiao entered the room. Since she was already here, The husband and wife could not refuse her treatment. The county-level scholar's mental condition was not very good. Lying on the bed, he was somewhat panicked and irritated. From his symptoms, fever, headache, papules, it was indeed similar to smallpox. But after careful examination, Gu Jiao found that it was not the case. It's an allergic rash. Gu Jiao said. This was a severe allergic reaction. It was not easy for him to survive until today. Many severe allergic reactions could cause shock or suffocation. It could only be said that this county-level scholar was very lucky. Gu Jiao took out a few tablets of loratadine from the small medicine box and put them in a porcelain bottle. She handed it to the husband and wife. Once a day, 1 tablet at a time. Swallow it with warm water. After eating, come to the clinic for a follow-up examination. This is it. The wife looked at the small medicine bottle in her hand and opened her mouth in disbelief, but they said it was smallpox. Gu Jiao said, he has a mild cold and an allergic rash. At first glance, it does look like smallpox, but he really isn't. The two of you don't have to worry. However, allergic rash was not a minor illness. If it became serious, it could be fatal at any time. He was lucky this time, but he had to be more careful in the future. What did he touch that made him like this? The woman recalled carefully and said, that day he ate a peach. In the afternoon he started to feel uncomfortable all over. I didn't pay much attention to it. I just thought that the peach's fur was stuck to his body. I let him take a bath, and he seemed to feel better. The next day, it was even worse. Gu Jiao did not have an allergen test paper for the time being, so she could only try to keep the patient away from peaches. Don't let him come into contact with peaches in the future. Okay. The woman agreed. She was clearly a young female doctor, but why was her words inexplicably convincing? No matter what, other doctors would not be able to cure his son. He could only try this young female doctor's method first. The woman went into the house to feed her son the medicine. Xiao Sanzi received the consultation fee. The consultation fee was 2 taels of silver, and the medical fee was 1 tael of silver. This was at the foot of the emperor, so this fee was already considered very generous. Gu Jiao carried a small basket out of the house and got into the carriage. Xiao Sanzi took the consultation fee and sat on the outer seat. He said to Gu Jiao, Miss Gu, are we going back? Gu Jiao nodded. Yes, let's go back. There was nothing else. Okay. Xiao Sanzi grabbed the horsewhip and drove the carriage forward slowly. The carriage had not gone far when suddenly, several men on horses galloped over. They were extremely fast and did not care about the people on the street. The people hurriedly avoided them, but there was still an old man who could not avoid them. His courage was knocked over, and he fell to the ground. The main culprit did not even look back and left. The old man fell on the side of the road and could not get up for a long time. This naturally caused a lot of sighs. A young man who was not from the city spoke. He asked the shop assistant who came out to watch the scene, Brother, isn't this at the foot of the emperor? How can someone dare to ride a horse like this? The shop assistant said, You don't know? Didn't you see the clothes they were wearing? The young man said, They were too fast, I didn't pay attention. The shop assistant looked at the back of the few people and said, They are people from the marshal's mansion. Marshal's mansion? The young man frowned. He had not been in the capital for long, and was not clear about the situation in the capital. The shop assistant patiently explained. They were originally general of Agile Cavalry of Hushan Barracks. A few days ago, they were conferred the title of Marshal of the World's Army. Those people are from the Marshal's mansion. The young man was puzzled. So arrogant? The shop assistant hurriedly made a shushing gesture. Shoo, you can't talk nonsense. They must have an urgent matter. Otherwise they would not be like this. What urgent matter? They almost killed someone on the street. Everyone knew that this was just an excuse, but no one dared to expose the truth. The general of Agile Cavalry, surnamed Tang, was Empress Dowager Zhuang's confidant. When Empress Dowager Zhuang returned from her illness, the first thing she did was promote him to Marshal of the World's Army. She openly took away Marquis Xianping's military power. Sister, the people of Tang Manor are too much. In a tea house facing the street, a girl in purple said to the Taoist nun opposite her, "This is not the first time they have used their power to bully people. Earlier in Willow Lane, I saw a servant of Tang Manor beating up a commoner. They said that the commoner owed Tang Manor money, but even if they owed money, they could not beat him up like that." The Taoist nun did not speak and only quietly sipped her tea. The purple-clothed girl leaned on the table, leaned in front of her, and whispered, "Elder sister, do you think that the rumor is true?" The Taoist nun looked at her. "What rumor?" The girl in purple said, "That Marshal Tang is the Empress Dowager's illegitimate son." The Taoist nun looked at her coldly. "Do you want to die?" The girl in purple stuck out her tongue, a bit intimidated by her sister, but still mustered up her courage and said, "I heard that the Empress Dowager almost married Princess Ningen to him." The Taoist nun pushed her sister back to her seat, looked at the noisy street and said, "Ziwan, go help that old man and buy all his tea." "Yes." The servant girl on the side bowed and was about to go downstairs when she heard the Taoist nun say, "Forget it, there's no need. Someone has already gone." The servant girl and the girl in purple looked at the old man at the same time, and saw a girl in green walk through the crowd to help him up. "Ah, sister. It's her." The girl in purple recognized Gu Jiao, the one who gave the top scorer a flower hairpin. No, the top scorer of the 3 tripod cauldrons gave her a flower hairpin. Why is she here? The girl in purple still could not forget the new top scorer, and thought of the girl who had been treated differently by the new top scorer. She was not good-looking, but after the flower hairpin incident, her appearance and dressing had become popular in the capital. Even the girl in purple had a small flower on her face. The Taoist nun looked at Gu Jiao and murmured, "Yes, it's really fate." After Gu Jiao helped the old man up, she bought a caddy of tea leaves from him. Perhaps the surrounding people felt that their behavior of standing by and doing nothing was worse than a little girl's, so they also bought the old man's tea leaves one after another. The basket of tea bags was sold out in an instant. "Thank you, miss, thank you." The old man cupped his hands and thanked her excitedly. Gu Jiao turned around and got into the carriage. The Taoist nun didn't withdraw her gaze until the carriage disappeared at the end of the street. Gu Jiao gave the tea leaves she bought to Xiao Sanzi, and then returned to Bishui Alley. Gu Yan and Gu Xiaoshan hadn't returned yet, so little Jing Kong went to his master's place. Senior servant Fong was cooking in the kitchen. Xiao Lulang plunged into the study and didn't even notice Gu Jiao pushing the door open. It was rare for him to be so absent-minded. Gu Jiao walked over and found that he was drawing. "What is this?" Gu Jiao asked. The light in the room was a little dim. She wanted to see the drawing clearly, so she moved closer. When Xiao Lulang heard her voice, her forehead was very close to his. Her warm breath intertwined with his. Xiao Lulang's heart suddenly jumped. His eyelashes trembled slightly. He felt that he should avoid her, but he didn't move. "Arithmetic," Xiao Lulang said. "I'm cutting a circle." "Cutting a circle? You want to calculate the ancestral rate?" Gu Jiao wasn't sure if the ratio of pi was called the ancestral rate in this spacetime. "You know about the ancestral rate?" Xiao Lulang was very surprised. Even though he knew that she had a lot of secrets, he didn't know that she had so many secrets and knew about the ancestral rate. Hearing that it was the ancestral rate, Gu Jiao understood that this spacetime also had parts that overlapped with the spacetime she lived in. For example, pi. Originally, Lu Hui calculated it to 4 decimals and called it the Hui ratio. Later, Lord Zhu calculated it to 7 decimals and called it the ancestral rate. Among them, Lu Hui and the Wei and Jin dynasties used the circle cutting technique. No matter which spacetime it was, Lord Zhu's fixing technique was lost. Otherwise, Xiao Lulang would be using the fixing technique now. The circle cutting technique used the area of a regular polygon inside a circle to infinitely approximate the area of a circle. It was a method to find the ratio of pi. Cut to make it smaller, and lose less. Cut again and again until it can't be cut, and then combine with the circle, and lose nothing. Lu Hui started from the hexagon in the circle, and cut the 3072 hexagons. Only then was he able to accurately calculate the number between 1415 and 1416. The amount of calculation was huge and terrifying. If he used calculus, it would be much faster. Gu Jiao did not change her expression and said, I heard it from the students in the girls' school. The girls' school also had arithmetic classes, but Xiao Luleng was not clear about the specific content. However, he knew that Gu Jiao was extremely smart. If she really heard it, she might not forget it. Gu Jiao said again, Why did you suddenly think of calculating this? Is it the homework of the Hanlin Academy? No. Xiao Luleng shook his head. He hesitated for a moment, but still told her about the little Jing Kong and Teacher Sunday. He mainly wanted to verify if the little Jing Kong's ancestral rate and those arithmetic questions were taught to him by Gu Jiao. As for making Teacher Sun cry and making a bet, he skipped over it. He only said that they had a harmonious discussion about the ancestral rate. Gu Jiao nodded and shook her head. She did teach little Jing Kong arithmetic, but she did not teach him those questions, nor did she talk about the ancestral rate. Can he recite such a long ancestral rate? Gu Jiao was very surprised. Xiao Luleng called little Jing Kong in. When little Jing Kong saw Gu Jiao, he almost thought that his bad brother-in-law had secretly told on him. However, when he saw that Gu Jiao's expression was normal, he secretly felt relieved. Xiao Luleng said, Recite the ancestral rate that you recited in front of Teacher Sun again. Little Jing Kong recited it obediently. Xiao Luleng said, I don't know if it's right, so I have to calculate it. Most people would never believe that little Jing Kong was right, because there were only 7 numbers in the book, but he recited 17. Xiao Luleng did not immediately deny little Jing Kong. It was not that he felt that little Jing Kong was right, but he had no way to prove that little Jing Kong was wrong. He would not use his status to oppress people just because he was older and had studied for more than 10 years. A scolding might be able to subdue a child, but it was not because the child was convinced, but because the child had given up on his desire to learn. Gu Jiao knew that little Jing Kong's recitation was completely correct. Who taught you that? Gu Jiao asked. I read it in a book, little Jing Kong said. What book? Can you show it to us? Gu Jiao asked again. Of course. Little Jing Kong ran out and rummaged through his pile of small rags for a while, and found a yellowed book with curly edges. He found a booklet and handed it to Gu Jiao. Jiao Jiao here. Gu Jiao took the booklet and read it together with Xiao Luleng. With just a glance, the two of them were stunned. Gu Jiao was stunned because she saw familiar words and formulas. Xiao Luleng was stunned because he saw patterns and words that he did not understand. At the same time, under these strange words and patterns, there were annotations in another language. It was the language of the Yin Kingdom. No wonder little Jing Kong could understand some of it. He had been learning the language of the Yin Kingdom recently. It was strange that he had a book from the Yin Kingdom. And Xiao Luleng turned to the last page and saw a big royal seal on it. He gasped. Could this be the letter of credence of the Yin Kingdom? The Yin Kingdom was the most powerful country among the 6 countries, but who would have thought that it was just a small country a few decades ago? Suddenly, a powerful state preceptor came to the Yin Kingdom one day. He brought 6 ancient books with him. The Yin Kingdom rose like a bamboo shoot after a spring rain because of the secrets in the ancient books. The treatment of leprosy was also learned from the ancient books. In the end, the 6 ancient books were sealed as letters of credence. They were kept in the palace of the Yin Kingdom and guarded by hundreds of imperial experts day and night. If this letter of credence was real, then the one in the palace of the Yin Kingdom was fake? It should be impossible, right? After all, Jing Kong was just a little monk who was dizzy with meat. Gu Jiao did not know what letter of credence it was, but she could conclude that the simplified Chinese characters and advanced mathematics formulas in this book did not belong to this time and space. Could it be that there were other time-traveling seniors here? The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel is updated faster and more fully. Millions of novels are free to read. You can find all the novels that you can't find on the internet here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_8964226/112595034 HTML Genius remembered the website address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg.com Bikaga mobile reading website. zhhbqg.com. Chapter 276. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel is updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels can be read for free. There are all kinds of novels that can't be found online. Nanny Fong finished cooking dinner, and the family went to the main room to eat. Gu Yan and Gu Xiaoshan were eating with Master Lu and Nanxiang, so they didn't have to wait for them. Although Grandaunt wasn't there, Granduncle was, so the atmosphere at the dinner table was still good. However, one of Granduncle's eyes was swollen, so they didn't ask what happened. After dinner, Gu Jiao helped Nanny Fong clean up the dishes, little Jing Kong went to walk the chicken, and Xiao Lulang went back to the room to study the ancient book that he thought was unlikely to be the national book of the Yan Kingdom. Even if there were translations and annotations, it wasn't easy to master it. Gu Jiao took more than 10 years to go from elementary mathematics to advanced mathematics. Of course, it was related to the progress of education, but the education resources in her previous life were more extensive and systematic. Xiao Lulang was crossing the river by feeling his way. The imperial exam didn't test arithmetic, and he didn't spend much effort on arithmetic in the past. This was the rhythm of a liberal arts student suddenly getting an advanced mathematics textbook. Gu Jiao. Starting tomorrow, I'll give my husband 6 walnuts. The family did their own things while waiting for Gu Yan and Gu Xiaoshan to come home. In the past, the two of them would arrive home around 4:45 in the evening, and the latest would be 4:45 in the evening. At 4:45 in the evening, Madame Yao couldn't sit still anymore. Every time she heard footsteps outside, she would turn her head to look. When the footsteps passed, she would secretly sigh. After another quarter of an hour, the sound of a carriage finally came from the door. Little Jing Kong had already taken a small bath and was lying in bed. When he heard the sound, he crawled out of bed, put on his shoes and ran out. I'll do it, I'll do it. The night in May was slightly cold, but it wasn't cold. He was wearing thin pajamas, and he opened the courtyard door with force. He looked up. Dear brother. The person who came was Gu Chongqing. Behind Gu Chongqing, a carriage slowly passed by. It turned out that the sound of the carriage had come from it. Gu Chongqing was riding a horse, but when he entered the alley, he dismounted and led the horse inside. Gu Chongqing looked at the little guy who had come all the way to open the door for him. He was suddenly in a good mood. He looked at the little guy's little pajamas and asked, Are you going to sleep? Little Jing Kong nodded. Yes. Then he shook his head. I'm waiting for Brother Yan and Brother Xiaoshan. Gu Chongqing turned to look at the end of the alley. Have they been studying so late recently? Little Jing Kong shook his head. No, it's only so late today. Has older brother Yan and older brother Xiaoshan returned? Yao Shi asked from the courtyard. Everyone in the family spoke with the identity and tone of Little Jing Kong. Little Jing Kong turned around and said, It's dear brother. Yao Shi's attitude towards Gu Chongqing was much better than before, but there was no motherly love and filial piety between them. They just treated each other as familiar guests. Are you worried about Yan? Gu Chongqing looked at Yao Shi and asked. When it came to Gu Yan, the two of them had a common topic. Yao Shi sighed. Yes, he didn't come so late in the past. I'm worried that he might have been delayed on the road. It's not raining today. Gu Chongqing took down the game that was hanging on the saddle and put it on the stone table. He said to Yao Shi, I'll go and look for him. Yao Shi looked at him gratefully. Will it delay you tomorrow? No. Gu Chongqing said. Yao Shi saw that he answered so straightforwardly that he should be fine. She was relieved and said, That's good, that's good. I'll go. Gu Chongqing did not even have time to say goodbye to his younger sister and brother-in-law. He turned around and left the residence. Gu Jiao saw that Xiao Lulang had finished a math problem. She also noticed that it was getting late. She went out and asked, Yan'er and Xiaoshan haven't returned yet? Yao Shi said. Shitzi went to look for them. Eldest brother came? Gu Jiao looked at the game on the table. Little Jing Kong was stepping on the stone bench and pulling the rabbit and pheasant inside. Gu Jiao walked over and picked him up. She went to the well to wash her hands and carried him back to his room. Go to sleep. Don't come down again. Okay. Little Jing Kong obediently agreed. Still not back? When Gu Jiao passed by the study room, Xiao Lulang asked her. Gu Jiao said, not yet. I'll go take a look. You stay at home and watch over Jing Kong. Don't let him run around. Most people could not watch over little Jing Kong. If she was not around, this child would be very naughty. Sure enough, as soon as Gu Jiao left, little Jing Kong sneaked out from the west room. Xiao Lulang stood at the door expressionlessly and looked at him condescendingly. Little Jing Kong thought for a while and made a final struggle. I want to pee. The place where Gu Yan and Gu Xiaoshan learned martial arts was in the north of the city. It was not a wealthy district, but it was not poor either. It was a place with beautiful scenery. There were two ways to get there from Baishui Tong. One way was to go through Chang and Street and go to Baisher Street. This road was more prosperous and was often used by Gu Yan and Gu Xiaoshan. The other way was to go through Xuanwu Street and go to the official road at the end. The further one went, the fewer people there were. The two usually took this road when they went there. When they came back, they did not take this road. It was too dark and they were afraid of accidents. But to be safe, Gu Jiao and Gu Changqing still took both roads. Gu Changqing went to the official road and Gu Jiao went to Baisher Street. At this time, Gu Yan and Gu Xiaoshan were indeed on Baisher Street. The reason why they were delayed was that the wheel of the carriage was broken. There was a tea house nearby. Lu Quan asked the two to sit in the tea house for a while he went to find someone to fix the carriage. The two were bored sitting in the tea house. When they saw a seller selling tonghulu, they remembered that little Jing Kong and Aunt Gu loved tonghulu. So they went to buy some for them. But how can we give it to Aunt Gu? Gu Xiaoshan asked. Send it to her. Gu Yan said. Oh. Gu Xiaoshan thought it was feasible and asked for a few more. Aunt Gu can't come out all the time. Buy a few more. She eats one a day. Gu Yan nodded and reached for his money bag. At this moment, a thief rushed over and bumped into Gu Yan. He stole Gu Yan's money bag. Gu Yan touched his waist. Oh, my money bag. The two quickly put down the tonghulu and chased after the thief. After a few steps, the thief was caught by someone. A tall and mighty figure stepped on the thief, causing the surrounding commoners to cheer. The two went to retrieve their money bags from the thief. Gu Yan suddenly felt two eyes on him that could not be ignored. He looked up and saw a man full of heroic spirit sitting in a room on the second floor of a restaurant. The man had strong facial features and a tall and sturdy body. He looked straight at Gu Yan. When their eyes met, he raised his cup to Gu Yan and smiled. Gu Yan frowned. He did not like this kind of smile. It made him uncomfortable. Found it. Let's go. Gu Xiaoshan said to Gu Yan. Okay. Gu Yan did not pay any more attention to the man. He went back to the restaurant with Gu Xiaoshan. However, Lu Quan had not returned yet. The two were bored to death waiting. Suddenly, the young warrior who caught the thief walked over. He cupped his hands to the two of them and said, My family's young master wants to be friends with the two young masters. I wonder if the two young masters would be willing to do me the honor. Who is your family's master? Gu Xiaoshan asked. That one. The young warrior pointed to the restaurant across the street. It was the man who raised his cup to him and smiled. Gu Yan frowned and looked away. Gu Xiaoshan looked and said, I don't know him. I don't want to be friends. The young warrior was stunned. He did not expect the other party to refuse so directly. I'm afraid the two of you don't know the identity of my family's young master. My family's young master is actually... Hey! The carriage is ready. Gu Xiaoshuan's sharp eyes saw the carriage outside. He pulled Gu Yan and said, Brother Yan, let's go. The two of them got into the carriage without looking back. They did not give the young warrior a chance to show off. They thought that they would be able to get home safely, but unexpectedly, the carriage broke down again. Lu Quan said, Forget it. We won't fix it for now. I'll go hire a carriage. You two go home first. As soon as he said that, An incomparably luxurious carriage stopped beside their carriage. Is the carriage broken? Accompanied by a man's low laughing voice, the curtain of the carriage was lifted, revealing a resolute face. When Guyen saw that it was him, he was annoyed to death. The man jumped out of the carriage and crouched down to check the broken wheels. He said, "It's no longer usable. If you don't mind, I can send you back. Where do you live?" Hearing this familiar tone, Lu Quan thought, could it be that he knew Xiaoshan and Guyen? But when he turned his head and saw that Guyen and Gu Xiaoshan did not want to talk to him, he understood. He cupped his hands and said, "We won't trouble you, young master. We'll go back ourselves. There's no carriage shop nearby." The man clapped his hands and said with a smile, "My younger brother is also a scholar from Qinghe Academy. I saw that they were wearing Qinghe Academy's uniform and seemed to be going the same way as me. So I thought of giving you a ride. But it's right for you to be cautious. Go forward and walk east at the 3rd intersection. There's a carriage shop about 2 li away. You can rent a carriage there." After saying that, the man took his leave. Lu Quan secretly heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that he had wronged the person. But it was fine. He could rent a carriage himself and save himself the trouble. Lu Quan went to rent a carriage. Gu Xiaoshan and Guyen stayed in the carriage and waited. The two of them fell asleep while waiting. When Gu Xiaoshan woke up, she found that Guyen had disappeared. Gu Changqing went to Nanfeng residence. "They left 2 hours ago. They haven't reached home yet?" Nan Xiang asked with a frown. She was wearing a veil, so Gu Changqing did not see her ferocious and terrifying face. But even if he saw it, he would not care about it, and would just forget about it. Gu Changqing said, "Maybe they've arrived now. I'll go back and look for them." Gu Changqing returned from Whitestone Street. On the way back, he met Lu Quan and Gu Xiaoshan. "Where's Guyen?" he asked. He's gone," Gu Xiaoshan said anxiously. "What happened?" Gu Changqing asked. Gu Xiaoshan recounted what had happened along the way. Gu Changqing narrowed his eyes slightly. "What did that man look like?" Gu Xiaoshan described in detail. Gu Changqing's expression immediately became cold. "Tang Ming." "That's right, the person who wanted to befriend Guyen was the Tiger Mountain Barracks Lieutenant Tang Ming. He was no longer a lieutenant. After his uncle became the Grand Marshal, he was immediately appointed as a deputy general. His rank was now higher than Gu Changqing's senior lieutenant. When he first saw Guyen at the restaurant, he was deeply stunned. When he met Guyen for the first time, Guyen was tightly covered by Gu Changqing's cloak. Only a pair of slender legs and a jade hand were exposed. Therefore, he didn't recognize that Guyen was the beautiful youth that Gu Changqing had held in his arms. In addition, the old chancellor was a very low-key person. The carriage he sat in was also low-key. It looked ordinary and didn't look like the transportation of a large family. Therefore, he didn't feel that Guyen was a person that couldn't be provoked. Guyen was lying on the soft bed. Because he was drugged, his breathing was a bit hurried. His cheeks were slightly hot, and there was a seductive blush on his face. The youth's figure was tall and slender. His Adam's apple wasn't big, but it was very delicate. Tang Ming had played with so many youths, but he had never seen such a peerless beauty. Just by looking, he felt like his soul was being stolen away. Guyen slowly woke up. The effect of the drug was still there and he couldn't move. His heart skipped a beat. From the corner of his eyes, he saw the face that he had seen countless times tonight. A strong sense of disgust suddenly rose from the bottom of his heart. However, Tang Ming smiled. He was indeed a beauty. Even when he was angry, he was still so seductive. The corners of his eyes that were slightly red really stirred up his heart. Tang Ming raised his hand. Because he practiced martial arts for many years, his palm and fingertips had thin calluses. He only lightly touched Guyan's face, and a red mark quickly appeared on that delicate skin. Tang Ming's gaze became lustful. Guyan's stomach felt nauseous. He used what little strength he had left to yell. "You get lost." This kind of yell wasn't intimidating at all. Tang Ming smiled. The feeling was too good. He wasn't satisfied with just touching Guyan's face. His fingers moved and he lifted Guyan's lapel. His skin was like porcelain. Tang Ming suddenly bent down and took a deep breath in the crook of Guyan's neck. You smell so good. Guyan was disgusted. He looked at the top of this man's head in disgust and endured the other's breath. You are seeking death. These words caused Tang Ming to pause. He raised his head and calmly looked at Guyan. So it's a little wild horse. This prince loves to tame wild horses that don't listen. In a moment, I'll give you a bowl of medicine and you'll cry and beg me. I am Marquis Dingan's son. Marquis Dingan? Tang Ming couldn't stop laughing. How could Marquis Dingan's son sit in such a broken carriage? Why don't you say you're Marquis Xianping's son? Marquis Xianping's name was much more famous than Marquis Dingan. If this really was Marquis Xianping's son, Tang Ming didn't dare to touch him. As for Marquis Dingan thinking of Gu Chongqing, Tang Ming's expression darkened. That was also a hard nut to crack. However, he didn't remember Gu Chongqing having such a younger brother. Unless he was that stepmother's son. Gu Chongqing didn't get along with his stepmother. Even his stepmother's son and daughter were not very fond of them. Gu Chongqing wouldn't care about the life or death of this younger brother. So whether he was or not wasn't important. Guyan saw that Marquis Dingan's identity wasn't useful and said with difficulty, Empress Dowager, will kill you. Tang Ming looked at him in amusement. Oh, why would the Empress Dowager want to kill me? Guyan, the Empress Dowager, is my great-aunt. Tang Ming was stunned at first, then he raised his head and laughed. The Empress Dowager is your great-aunt? The Empress Dowager is your great-aunt? I don't know you, but I know the Empress Dowager. I know the Empress Dowager's family better than you. There were so many children in the Zhuang family. He had seen every one of them, including the jade-like young master, Royal Princeton. Unfortunately, Royal Princeton was the Empress Dowager's favorite, and was also Imperial Tutor Zhuang's grandson. With his status, he couldn't afford to offend the other party. Guyan glared at him. The effects of the drug were very strong. He had only said a few words, but he was already about to fall asleep. He tried his best to stay awake. If you don't let me go, the Empress Dowager really will kill you. Ha ha. Tang Ming laughed arrogantly. Whether or not the Empress Dowager will kill me, I don't know. Why don't I tell you who I am first? I am the nephew of the Grand Marshal of the land's armed forces. My uncle is the Empress Dowager's trusted aide. The first thing the Empress Dowager did when she returned to the capital was to promote my uncle from the great general of Agile Cavalry to the Grand Marshal of the land's armed forces. His military power is below Marquis Xianping. Tell me, will the Empress Dowager kill me? Just because she touched a little scholar like you? Guyan didn't have the strength to speak anymore. His resistance just now had caused his face to redden even more. Tang Ming liked it very much. He lifted Guyan's chin. Be good. Don't be afraid. I will treat you well. After you take this pill, you won't feel any discomfort. As he spoke, he took out a porcelain bottle from his bosom and poured out a dark red pill into his palm. Guyan gritted his teeth. Unfortunately, even if he hadn't been drugged, his little bit of strength wasn't enough in the eyes of an expert like Tang Ming, let alone the fact that he had been drugged. Tang Ming grabbed his chin and forced him to swallow the pill. Guyan struggled with all his might, but it was all in vain. As the pill entered his stomach, his consciousness gradually dissipated. Tang Ming smiled triumphantly. He pulled down the curtains and tore the clothes on the floor. The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels can be read for free. Novels with connotations that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_896422826/1125923117. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Pavilion's mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 277. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, Please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are all available here. Gu Jiao also came to Whitestone Street. She shuttled through the crowd, looking for Gu Yan's figure. When she passed by a tea house, she vaguely felt that it was familiar, as if she had been here before. But she clearly hadn't. It was Gu Yan. He had been here before. Gu Jiao went back to the tea house to look. When she passed by a corner, her footsteps stopped. She looked at a spacious but secluded alley on the left. She didn't know why, but she suddenly couldn't breathe. She covered her stuffy chest. There was a burst of pain there. Yen. After Gu Chongqing came out of Namfeng residence, he went back along Whitestone Street and also found this place. He saw Gu Jiao and urged his horse to rush over. Seeing that Gu Jiao's expression was not right, he hurriedly asked, "What's wrong?" Gu Jiao's hand that was holding her lapel tightened. She looked at the dark and boundless night in the east. Yen is there. Gu Chongqing followed her gaze and looked into the distance. He retracted his gaze and stretched out his hand to her. "Come up." Gu Jiao grabbed his hand and jumped onto the horse. She held the saddle herself. Gu Chongqing didn't have to worry about her falling like he was worried about Gu Yan. He pulled the reins tightly. "Go." The horse seemed to feel its master's mood and quickly galloped in the night. "Which way?" At the fork in the road, Gu Chongqing asked Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao turned her head and looked. "This way." Gu Chongqing's legs tightened around the horse's belly. He quickly rushed to the right side of the street. When he crossed the street and entered a luxurious alley, he guessed what was going on. This alley was very famous in the capital, and it was mostly used by the rich and powerful to indulge in debauchery. Someone had once brought him here and said that they would give him a house. At that time he did not know much about these things, but he was not used to accepting bribes. The other party smiled and said, "Why are you being so polite? Lord Tang also bought a residence here. It's the one in front." Thinking up to this point, Gu Chongqing already knew where Tang Ming was. He couldn't wait any longer. He got off the horse and handed it over to Gu Jiao. Then he used his qing gong and disappeared into the night. The moment he left, something flashed through his mind, but it was too fast for him to grasp. The moonlight was dim and the candlelight was ambiguous. Tang Ming had already torn apart Gu Yan's outer and inner robes, leaving only a thin inner robe draped over his body. She was truly a rare beauty. Tang Ming caressed the pair of slender, fair legs beneath him and pressed down on Gu Yan. Bang! With a loud sound, the entire door fell straight to the ground. A strong murderous aura came from behind Tang Ming, and the curtains moved without any wind. Tang Ming felt a chill run down his spine. He raised his hand to grab the long sword by his pillow, but before he could touch it, a long whip pierced through the curtains and wrapped around his neck. He didn't even have time to resist before he was ruthlessly pulled up and thrown against the wall. After a violent collision, he fell heavily to the ground. This fall was not light, and he was stunned for a long time before he got up. Gu Chongqing dashed to the bed and lifted the curtains. When he saw Gu Yan's naked body, his gaze turned cold. He did not use the blanket on the bed to wrap Gu Yan up. Instead, he quickly took off his outer robe and wrapped Gu Yan up tightly. Gu Yan's consciousness was scattered, and his body was slightly hot. He had been drugged. Gu Chongqing wanted to kill someone, but there was nothing more important than Gu Yan's life. He carried Gu Yan up, and Gu Yan lay weakly in his arms. "Don't," he said weakly. Gu Chongqing's heart ached terribly. His arms that were holding Gu Yan were trembling uncontrollably. "It's me," he said softly. Gu Yan glanced at him in a daze. Actually, he couldn't see clearly anymore. He could only see a vague outline in front of him, but the other party's aura made him feel at ease. He parted his lips slightly. "Brother?" Gu Chongqing's heart was crushed by this brother. Even though he knew that this brother was the same as the big brother that little Jing Kong called him, Gu Chongqing's heart still trembled slightly. He suddenly wanted to tell him, "Yes, I'm your brother, your biological brother." Sob. After confirming the identity of the person who had come, Gu Yan suddenly felt wronged. His eyes, which hadn't even turned red in front of Tang Ming, suddenly turned red. The corners of his eyes and the tips of his eyebrows revealed an indescribable grievance. Gu Changqing's heart was instantly pierced into a sieve. He hugged Gu Yan's arm tightly. At this moment he was about to lose all rationality. If Gu Yan's aura wasn't too weak, he really wanted to rush over and end Tang Ming. Gu Changqing. It's you? Tang Ming finally found some strength. He slowly got up from the ground. But before he could get up, he was kicked back down by Gu Changqing. He suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. Gu Changqing looked at him with a murderous look. Tang Ming, I'll settle this score with you. Tang Ming felt like he had seen a ghost. Why would Gu Changqing come here? Could it be that this brat? Tang Ming suddenly remembered that he had seen Gu Changqing riding a horse with a youth on the streets. Could it be that this little beauty in front of him was the youth that Gu Changqing had protected in his arms? What was their relationship? This brat said that he was Marquis Ding An's son. Could it really be? But didn't Gu Changqing only recognize his two younger brothers from the same mother? When had he cared about the life and death of a stepbrother? He looked so nervous, as if someone wanted to take his life. Was it necessary? Tang Ming had suffered some internal injuries. He clutched his aching abdomen and glared fiercely at Gu Changqing. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth with his other hand and sneered. Isn't he just the son of a vixen? Don't you hate them? Why don't you give him to me? I'll discipline him for you. Tang Ming really didn't care about the child of his second wife. This kind of child wasn't favored in a normal family. Moreover, he had heard that Marquis Ding An's second wife didn't have a high status and had been neglected all these years. She brought her son to live in an estate. Since that was the case, who was Gu Changqing trying to show by putting on a protective look? Gu Yan's breathing was very unstable. Gu Changqing resisted the urge to fight Tang Ming, and finally glanced at Tang Ming. If I were you, I would escape the capital overnight and never come back. Heh, Tang Ming snorted disdainfully. If this had been in the past, Tang Ming might have been afraid of Gu Changqing threatening him like this. But now, his uncle was the Grand Marshal of the world's armed forces, and he had been promoted to Deputy General. Gu Changqing was just a small Hushan commandant. It wasn't enough to fill the gaps between his teeth. He wasn't afraid that Gu Changqing would go and complain. Although he was in the wrong in this matter, if it really got out, it would damage this young boy's reputation. When that time came, the entire capital would know that Gu Changqing's younger brother had been played by him, Tang Ming. Could Gu Changqing and this beautiful young boy afford to lose this kind of face? Gu Changqing didn't waste any more time with Tang Ming. He carried Gu Yan and used his qinggong to leave this place. Not long after they left, Gu Changqing ran into Gu Jiao, who had stopped her horse by the side of the road, and was about to rush into the residence. Gu Changqing saw his mount and remembered that he had forgotten something. His horse had a strange temperament and normally wouldn't let others ride it. Did something happen to his younger sister? Gu Jiao didn't know what he was thinking. She looked at Gu Changqing, who was wrapped in Gu Yan's clothes. In that instant, a bloody light flashed through her eyes. Who did this? Tang Ming. You don't know him. A member of the Tang family? That's right. Gu Jiao looked at the residence and clenched her fists. She held back the violence in her blood and walked in front of Gu Changqing. She looked at Gu Yan's face and checked Gu Yan's pulse. Gu Yan's money pouch was gone. It contained his medicine. Gu Jiao's pouch also contained Gu Yan's medicine all year round. She first gave Gu Yan 2 pills, and then took the water from the saddle for him to swallow. But in Gu Yan's situation, just taking medicine was clearly not enough. The two of them hurriedly brought Gu Yan back to Jadewater Alley. The night wind was a little cold. Gu Changqing was afraid that Gu Yan would catch a cold, so he took off his inner clothes and only wore a thin inner garment. He carried Gu Yan and walked the whole way. Along the way, there were people who looked at them strangely from time to time, but they didn't recognize who he was. When they reached the door, Gu Jiao thought of something and said to Gu Changqing, "Let's go to the son-in-law's room." Gu Changqing understood. Okay. He carried Gu Yan to the next room. The old chancellor had just rested and was shocked when he saw this scene. How could this be? What happened? Gu Changqing had never seen the old chancellor before, but as he came to Jadewater Alley more and more, He slowly knew the old chancellor's identity. As for how he became Xiao Liulong's granduncle, Gu Chongqing didn't know for now. He didn't deliberately ask about it. I'll explain to you later. Is there a side room? Gu Chongqing asked. Yes, there is. The west wing was empty. The old chancellor opened the door of the west wing and laid out a clean mattress. Gu Chongqing gently put Gu Yan on the bed. Gu Jiao brought a small medicine box over. With Gu Yan's physical condition, it wasn't suitable to induce vomiting. He could only use infusion to promote the metabolism of drugs. But in the process of metabolism, his organs had to bear a huge burden, which was undoubtedly very dangerous for people with congenital heart disease. Gu Jiao opened the small medicine box and gave Gu Yan a tonic infusion. Gu Jiao measured Gu Yan's blood pressure. The blood pressure was soaring abnormally, which should be caused by drugs. If it couldn't be lowered in a while, he had to use antihypertensive drugs. Gu Yan had already lost consciousness, but his hand was still grabbing Gu Chongqing's sleeve. He had been grabbing it before he fainted. Gu Chongqing didn't take his hand away. He just silently guarded in front of the bed. Soon Gu Yan's body temperature rose. Gu Jiao put an ice pack on his forehead. Gu Yan's situation was difficult because he had a heart disease. He couldn't use drugs indiscriminately. So unless it was a last resort, Gu Jiao tried to adopt conservative treatment as much as possible. How is he? Gu Chongqing looked at the unconscious Gu Yan and asked with a hoarse voice. Gu Jiao adjusted the drip of the infusion bottle and whispered, "It's hard to say now." Although it was only 1 or 2 knockout drugs, it was too fatal for his body. Fortunately, he had been taking anti-heart failure drugs for the past year. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to bear it. Thinking of this, Gu Jiao thought of one thing. She could dream of Xiao Lulang and Gu Chongqing's accident. Why couldn't Gu Yan? She wasn't sure if Gu Chongqing and Xiao Liulong's accident would appear in her dream in advance, but at least she dreamed of it. But Gu Yan didn't dream of it even once. It couldn't be that Gu Yan wasn't close enough to her. She and Gu Yan were twins. They had the most intimate and difficult relationship in the world. Could it be that they were too close? In addition, she also realized that she couldn't predict her own danger. It was the same when the brothel collapsed, and it was the same when she was crushed under the roof with her great-aunt. She couldn't predict her own fate. Could it be that because she and Gu Yan were twins, she couldn't predict Gu Yan's fate? If that was the case, then Gu Yan's hidden guards would have to be recalled to the capital. After Tang Ming was beaten up by Gu Chongqing, he was no longer in the mood to play and rode his horse back to Tang Manor. Tang Manor was no longer a general's manor, but a marshal's manor. The courtyard was much more imposing. Tang Ming stood in front of 2 majestic stone lions. He straightened his clothes and brushed his sleeves to make sure no one would notice that he was fooling around. Only then did he step into the manor. Tang Yueshan had just finished practicing his swordsmanship in the courtyard. A servant handed him a towel. He took it and wiped the sweat off his forehead. Panting, he asked, "Is Minger back yet?" The servant replied. Replying to master, he hasn't. Perhaps he was delayed by official business. Recently, too many people have come to our residence to visit. Master, you don't want to see them, so they went to find young master. The Tang family had 2 branches. Tang Yueshan was the second branch. He had an elder brother and sister-in-law. Tang Ming was the legitimate son of the first branch. Tang Yueshan's elder brother had been paralyzed for a long time, but Tang Yueshan didn't seize the first branch's property. He still let his elder brother be the head of the Tang family. His marshal's manor was next door to the Tang family. In the eyes of outsiders, the 2 families were still the same. Tang Yueshan didn't have any sons, only a few daughters. Everyone in the manor knew how much Tang Yueshan doted on his nephew. In the future, Tang Ming would not only inherit the first branch's property, but also Tang Yueshan's power. The servants of the marshal's manor all regarded Tang Ming as their young master. Tang Ming's biological father was paralyzed in bed and couldn't take care of him. So he asked his younger brother to take care of him for him. Tang Ming had worshipped his uncle since he was a child, so he was happy to stay with Tang Yueshan. Speak of the devil. Tang Yueshan was just wiping his sweat when he saw Tang Ming come over with a smile. "Uncle, I'm back." Tang Yueshan's serious face immediately showed a trace of joy. Why are you so late? Are there too many official business in the military camp? Tang Ming smiled and said, What official business? Uncle, you don't want me to meet those officials in private. I came out a long time ago. I came back late because I went to buy your favorite spicy fragrant snails. As he spoke, he took out the food box he had hidden behind him. Uncle, look. Is this from the restaurant you often go to? When Tang Yueshan heard this, the joy in his heart overflowed. He opened the food box and took a sniff. Satisfied, he said, Yes, this is the smell. The servant smiled and said, Young master is being filial to you. We didn't expect this. Tang Yueshan smiled happily. After autumn, the field snails were the most plump and juicy. Although it wasn't the best time to eat snail meat, the fragrant snails from that restaurant were delicious. Besides, he valued Tang Ming's kindness more. You haven't eaten, right? Tang Yueshan looked at Tang Ming and asked. No. Tang Ming shook his head. Have someone set the table. Tang Yueshan ordered the servant. Yes, sir. The servant hurried off. The weather was getting warmer. The food was placed in the courtyard. Tang Yueshan didn't eat at home often, and he didn't invite his daughters to eat. Tang Ming was the only one he doted on. Not only did he eat at the same table as him, but he could also enter and leave his courtyard freely. Tang Yueshan never got angry when he touched his things. The bamboo shoots in the kitchen are so tender today, Tang Ming said. Eat more. Tang Yueshan put a lot of food on Tang Ming's plate. Tang Ming buried his head in the food. Tang Yueshan was very satisfied when he saw Tang Ming eating heartily. He couldn't help but show a hint of affection. After dinner, go say hello to your parents and come back quickly to rest. There's a martial arts competition in the barracks tomorrow. Don't forget. Tang Ming smiled obediently and said, I didn't forget. Don't worry, uncle. Tang Yueshan naturally trusted Tang Ming. He had raised Tang Ming single-handedly. Tang Ming was smart, had a good constitution, was resilient, and was willing to endure hardships. Practicing martial arts was a boring and painful thing, but Tang Ming persevered. Not only that, but Tang Ming was also familiar with the art of war and knew how to use it. Tang Yueshan had high expectations for Tang Ming. Tang Yueshan added, Also, you should control your temper. Don't get into fights with people in the barracks for no reason. Tang Ming smiled obediently and said, I know, uncle. I just can't stand them being lazy. I'll pay attention in the future. If they make a mistake again, I'll talk to them nicely. That's more like it. Tang Yueshan was very satisfied. Tang Ming's temper was a little spoiled, but who hadn't been young and hot-blooded? When he was young, he was also a troublemaker in the barracks. It was good that Tang Ming knew his mistakes and could change. After the uncle and nephew finished their meal, Tang Ming went to the first branch to say hello to his parents. This was something Tang Yueshan had asked Tang Ming to do every day. He wanted him to be filial to his parents and not disrespect his father just because he was paralyzed in bed. Tang Ming only removed all his disguises after he returned to his room. He sat on a chair and lifted his shirt. When he saw the bruise on his abdomen caused by Gu Chongqing's kick, he was so angry that he gritted his teeth. Then he thought of Gu Yan, and felt a little regretful. He savored the memory and narrowed his eyes. Such a delicious and beautiful young man. He had almost eaten him. Gu Jiao and Gu Chongqing guarded Gu Yan for the whole night. He was in danger once in the middle of the night, so Gu Jiao gave him medicine. When it was close to dawn, his body temperature returned to normal, but he still didn't wake up. Gu Jiao looked at the small streak of dawn on the horizon, then looked at Gu Chongqing, who had a cold expression the whole night, and said, His condition is better than last night. His life won't be in danger for the time being. You go rest. I'll take care of him here. Gu Chongqing paused and stood up. He looked at the unconscious Gu Yan with reluctance in his eyes. Okay, I'll come back later. He walked to the door, and was about to step over the threshold when he stopped and turned back. His gaze fell on Gu Yan's face. What's wrong? Gu Jiao asked. Gu Chongqing shook his head. Forget it. It's nothing. If he heard it, then he heard it. This was no longer important. What was important was Tang Ming. He wanted Tang Ming's life. Digression. Everyone, do you still have monthly tickets? The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_896428266/112566466. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikugo mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 278. The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel will be updated even faster. Millions of novels can be read for free. There are novels with connotations that can't be found online here. Today the sky was gloomy. The soldiers of Hushan barracks had already finished their morning drill and were standing in formation on the field. Tang Ming spurred his horse and walked past the square formations with his head held high. Deputy General Hu spurred his horse and followed beside him, slightly behind him by half a horse's length. In terms of rank, both of them were secondary class 5th rank. In terms of experience, Deputy General Hu was much more experienced than Tang Ming, the newly appointed Deputy General. But Hu asked Tang Ming to have an uncle who was the Grand Marshal of the world's armed forces. Tang Ming himself was also brave enough. In just a few days, he had been promoted from a lieutenant to a deputy general. Perhaps he would be able to become a proper general soon. Deputy General Hu didn't have the guts to offend this little master. How are those people standing? Tang Ming stopped his horse and pointed at the square formation at the back. They're so crooked that they can't even stand? What use does the military camp have for this kind of trash? Deputy General Hu broke out in cold sweat. That upright posture wasn't enough? He was picking on them. That was true. That square formation was made up of the original Gu clan army. Old Marquis Gu didn't get along with the Grand Marshal of the world's armed forces in the early years. After the Gu clan army was incorporated under his command, some generals treated them like vegetables and embarrassed the Gu clan army quite a bit. As for Tang Ming, after entering the camp, he didn't hide his suppression of the Gu clan army at all. For example, right now, Tang Ming said coldly, "Those at the side, disperse. Leave that group of people behind and continue to stand there until I'm satisfied." Deputy General, who waved his hand at the personal guard beside him. "Why aren't you going?" "Yes." The personal guard conveyed Tang Ming's order. Everyone was used to this. They looked at those people sympathetically and went to the cafeteria to eat breakfast. Those people stood there for the whole morning. They didn't eat breakfast even when the competition started, but it was impossible to let them eat now. Even if they were let go, the cafeteria would have been cleaned up long ago. For some reason, Deputy General Hu felt that Tang Ming was being too harsh today. Although he had made things difficult for them in the past, he wouldn't let them starve on such an important day. If this were to happen on the battlefield, wouldn't it be the same as letting the soldiers go into battle with empty stomachs? Deputy General Hu was puzzled, but he didn't dare to say anything. There were 2 arenas in the military camp, one big and one small. The big arena was usually used for the annual martial arts competition. Today they were using a small arena. Martial arts competitions had always been a tradition in the military camp. The original intention was to encourage morale and select talents. Every time the champion was awarded 10 taels of silver. Most of the people in the military camp were commoners. Everyone was interested in money, but they were even more interested in being chosen by the generals. At that time, Deputy General Hu had taken a fancy to Xue Ningxiang's brother-in-law, Zhou Erzwang, because Zhou Erzwang had defeated a very powerful corporal in the arena. The arena began. Tang Ming, Deputy General Hu, and a few other generals from Tiger Mountain Barracks sat on the temporary viewing platform across from them. However, to their surprise, the first person to go up was Gu Chongqing. Gu Chongqing was dressed in dark brocade robes and held the Qing Xian long sword in his hand. He stood on the arena and under the blue dome of heaven. The place where Tang Ming had been beaten by Gu Chongqing was still aching faintly. He narrowed his eyes coldly. What's going on? Why is Commandant Gu going up? That's right. Why did Gu Chongqing come to fight in the arena? Why would he take a fancy to an arena of this level? Actually, in the early days of the arena, the generals had always been the first to fight. After the generals had fought, the arena was handed over to the rest of the soldiers. Later on, the military camp's official style prevailed. The generals with official ranks felt that winning wasn't something to be proud of, but losing was shameful. Gradually, they withdrew from the arena. This was Gu Chongqing's first time in the arena. He faced the wind, his hair bound by a jade crown, his robes flapping. His aura was like a rainbow. For a long time, no one dared to go up. Gu Chongqing then began to call out names. He was a commandant. As long as he didn't call out anyone with a higher rank than himself, no one could refuse. The first name he called out was Fu Peng. He was one of Tang Ming's subordinates. Gu Chongqing didn't give Tang Ming any face and knocked him out of the arena with a single move. After that, Gu Chongqing called out another 17 or 18 people in one go. They were all Tang Ming's subordinates, and they were all defeated with a single move. Tang Ming's fists were clenched tightly. If he still couldn't tell that Gu Chongqing was deliberately targeting him, then it wouldn't make sense. Was Gu Chongqing fighting for justice for the Gu clan army? Or was he avenging his stepbrother? Gu Chongqing knocked down another one of Tang Ming's subordinates. He didn't even use his weapon. He looked at Tang Ming and didn't hide the provocation in his eyes. Are these the soldiers that Deputy General Tang brought out? They're just SOSO. Provocation was definitely effective on Tang Ming, especially in front of all the soldiers. Tang Ming, couldn't afford to lose face like this. Tang Ming looked coldly at Gu Chongqing. He grabbed the sword on the table and leaped up, landing firmly on the arena. Everyone was stunned. It couldn't be right? What day was it today? The Tang clan's little overlord was going to go up against the cold-faced Hades? Was it really that exciting? The relationship between Gu Chongqing and Tang Ming had never been harmonious, but this was the first time that they were going up against each other in public. Tang Ming had actually provoked Gu Chongqing countless times, but Gu Chongqing had always chosen to ignore him. Everyone thought that the two of them couldn't go up against each other. It seems that it was Commandant Gu who provoked Deputy General Tang first. That's right. What's wrong with him? I don't know. His gaze is so scary. Everyone could tell that Gu Chongqing was acting strangely today. He had always been a cold-faced Hades in the military camp, but he wasn't rash or provocative, let alone now when he was shrouded in a huge killing intent. This Commandant Gu was really too scary. Tang Ming chuckled. Admit it. You're actually jealous of me. You're jealous that I've become a deputy general and can ride on your head. What do you mean by avenging your stepbrother? I've thought about it. You, Gu Chongqing, aren't such a brotherly person. Gu Chongqing didn't waste time talking nonsense with him. He tossed out his sword and pulled it out in the air. With a kick to the scabbard sped toward Tang Ming. Tang Ming's expression changed, and he abruptly turned his body sideways. The scabbard flew past his face and stabbed firmly into the wall behind the arena. That wall was made of stone. How much strength did one need to be able to stab such a blunt scabbard in? Tang Ming's gaze returned to Gu Chongqing, and a bad premonition surged from the bottom of his heart. He had long known that Gu Chongqing had hidden his strength, but he didn't know exactly how much. He had passed the 12th stage of the 18 bronze men array, while Gu Chongqing had passed the 13th stage. But the strength of that move just now was at least above the 15th stage. Tang Ming suddenly regretted going up into the arena. However, it was too late now. There were so many people watching him. He couldn't surrender, and he couldn't lose. Tang Ming also pulled out his scabbard and threw it back to his subordinate. He then slashed out toward Gu Chongqing. The old marquee weapon was a 9-section whip. Therefore, Gu Chongqing was best at using whips. However, he didn't like using 9-section whips. Seeing that Tang Ming's sword was coming toward him, Gu Chongqing didn't even dodge. Had this person been scared silly by his sword chi? Just as this thought flashed through Tang Ming's mind, Tang Ming was struck by Gu Changqing's sword. Tang Ming was stunned. He didn't even see how Gu Changqing had attacked. That sword slashed through Tang Ming's armor and left a gash on the right side of his abdomen. Blood spurted out with a swoosh. Everyone was stunned. Although swords and sabers had no eyes, wasn't this attack a little too fast and vicious? Tang Ming covered his wound in disbelief and retreated a few steps. He looked at the blood on his wound and gritted his teeth, saying, "Gu Changqing, you're courting death." A cold glint appeared in Gu Changqing's eyes. "I've said it before. Don't have any ideas about him. I'll kill you. I won't kill you secretly. I'll beat you up until you're looking for your teeth all over the floor. I'll trample you under my feet and then kill you." Tang Ming suddenly realized that Gu Changqing was serious. He seemed to understand why Gu Changqing had done this. Gu Changqing was humiliating him. Because he had humiliated Gu Yan, Gu Changqing was going to let him have a taste of what he had done 10 times, 100 times over. Tang Ming clenched his fists. "You're crazy. Aren't you afraid that you'll pay for it with your life?" Gu Changqing used his actions to tell him whether he was afraid or not. He slashed out with his sword again and slashed Tang Ming's right abdomen. The third slash pierced Tang Ming's left arm. The fourth slash injured Tang Ming's left leg. The fifth slash. From the moment Tang Ming started to attack, he hadn't won against Gu Changqing in a single move. On the other hand, Gu Changqing's every slash caused Tang Ming to bleed. This wasn't a martial arts competition. It was a one-sided suppression. Tang Ming, the son of heaven, the second most powerful expert in the military camp, was actually so weak. "Stop." Deputy General who couldn't stand it anymore. If he continued to hit Tang Ming, he'd lose his life. However, not only did Gu Changqing stop, he even pierced his sword toward Tang Ming's heart. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Tang Ming was so weak that he couldn't move. He was just like Gu Yan, who couldn't move last night. He had become a lamb for others to do whatever they wanted to him. All the blood drained from his face. To a general, being abused like this in the arena was no different from an ordinary person being pinned down and played with. He had a taste of Gu Yan's despair and humiliation. In the blink of an eye, a strong gust of wind blew over and shook Tang Ming away from Gu Changqing's sword. Tang Ming crashed into the wall and spat out a mouthful of blood. However, he had managed to avoid a fatal blow. A tall and powerful figure landed in the arena, shielding Tang Ming behind him. When Tang Ming saw who it was, he crawled over and hugged the other party's leg. "Uncle, he wants to kill me." Tang Yueshan's cold gaze landed on Gu Changqing's face. "Doesn't Commandant Gu know the rules of a martial arts competition? You can't kill anyone." "Is he even human?" Gu Changqing asked coldly. Tang Ming glanced at his uncle guiltily. However, Tang Yueshan didn't look at him. He punished the old subordinates of the Gu clan. He was indeed too harsh. "However, if you want to take his life because of this, I'm afraid you'll be the one who went overboard." Gu Changqing didn't explain. This was good too. He could keep Gu Yan's secret. Tang Yueshan snorted coldly. "Then why don't I exchange a few blows with you?" Tang Yueshan was famous for his protective nature. This was why almost no one in the capital dared to provoke Tang Ming. Even if they were humiliated by Tang Ming, they could only swallow their anger. Tang Ming looked at Gu Changqing with deep hatred. A look of vengeance flashed across his face. "Uncle, kill him. Kill him. Kill him and avenge me." Tang Yueshan naturally couldn't kill Gu Changqing in front of the entire military camp. However, it would be easy for him to make Gu Changqing suffer a little. However, just as he was about to make his move, a voice as loud as a bell rang out. "Wait!" Gu Changqing frowned. Deputy General Hu and the others turned to look. The old Marquis? Marquis Xianping followed behind the old Marquis. The old Marquis had retired and no longer held any official position. However, Marquis Xianping was still the great general of the state. Other than Tang Yueshan, everyone had to bow to him. Tang Yueshan's position was higher than his, but his status was inferior. Marquis Xianping was a first-rank marquis, a relative of the emperor. Tang Yueshan reluctantly made a fist and palm salute. It was a very perfunctory salute. Marquis Xianping didn't mind. He smiled faintly and said, "Long time no see. How are you, Lord Tang?" Tang Yueshan didn't have a good relationship with the old Marquis, nor did he have a good relationship with Marquis Xianping. The former had a grudge against him, while the latter, except for their different standpoints, it was purely because Marquis Xianping was too good at irritating people. Tang Yueshan and Marquis Xianping were the same age, but when they stood next to each other, it was as if they were a generation apart. Marquis Xianping hid his hands in his sleeves and looked at Tang Yueshan's round belly with a faint smile. "It seems that Lord Tang has been eating a lot lately. Is the salary of the Supreme Marshal too high? You're already a Supreme Marshal. Don't frown all the time. Look at you, you have more wrinkles." Tang Yueshan was furious. What did it mean to touch the pot that didn't boil? This was it. Speaking of which, he was wronged. When he was young, sure Yi used to be a handsome man, but now he was fat and looked like a middle-aged greasy uncle. Marquis Xianping looked like this 20 years ago, and 20 years later, he still looked like this. How infuriating. If it were someone else who insulted him like this, he could still say, "What's the point of being a handsome man? Do you know martial arts? Can you fight? Can you go to the battlefield and kill the enemy?" But Marquis Xianping couldn't say that. Marquis Xuanping's arrival changed the atmosphere. Marquis Xianping took away a lot of Tang Yueshan's hatred for Gu Changqing. When the old Marquis proposed to take Gu Changqing back to the mansion for strict discipline, Tang Yueshan agreed without hesitation. Of course, it was also because Tang Ming's injuries were too serious and he fainted from excessive blood loss. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more complete. Millions of novels are free to read. There are all kinds of novels that you can't find online. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_8964286/112563408. HTML Genius memorized the website address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg.com Bikugo mobile reading website. zhhbqg.com. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.